actually right about something. Spicy take.
Wow, always spicy on POPlitics and the spillover. But we hope you enjoyed today's live stream. It's going to be a lot of fun. Isabel and I will see you very soon. Coming up next, Human Mets Daily with Jack Posobiec.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily, powered by Turning Point USA. Today's top stories: the Uyghur skier who lit the Olympic torch in the opening ceremony of the Beijing Olympics has disappeared following her less than sterling showing on her recent ski outing. We're going to talk about this. Next, the Canadian government is cracking down on the peaceful trucker protests. Third, leftists get Joe Rogan to delete over 100 podcasts from Spotify. And finally, President Biden's first year in office saw 73 police officers killed, the most since 1995. All this and more ahead, Human Events Daily. Well, of course, as the CCP is hosting their Olympics this year, they've been given it, and it is the coronation ceremony for Xi Jinping. I remember hearing people saying, oh, we're going to expose this and it's not going to happen, and you'll see there'll be boycotts, and we're going to really hold China accountable, we're going to hold the CCP accountable, but none of it happened. And none of it's going to happen. Why? Because of money and power. The politicians of the West have been bought off. This is elite merger, all right? Elite merger with the CCP. They do not care. Oh, sure, they might be up there and they're gonna talk a big talk about this. Or you get people like H.R. McMaster out there, the general, saying we need to confront China on the South China Sea. Meanwhile, he literally sits on the board of directors of Zoom, all right? Understand, folks, you're being conned. Don't fall for it. So, of course, we know what they're doing to the Uyghurs, and I've talked about this before, because they're trying to build infrastructure across Xinjiang into Pakistan to be able to get that oil out of Iran up through the Gulf, up through Pakistan, and then overland through Xinjiang province from the One Belt, One Road to fuel their growth around the world and fuel their growth in East China. Well, the issue, though, is all these Uyghurs are in the way. So what do? Well, they lock them up. They're locking them all up. But, of course, what did the CCP come back and do? Xi Jinping came out, and even I didn't predict this in my Newsweek piece. Got to give him credit. I didn't actually predict he would be this absolutely ruthless. Huge slap in the face to the West. He chose a Uyghur athlete to go and carry the torch for the final moments of the Beijing Olympics ceremony. Take a look. Well, there's just been one problem with that, and what is it? Oh, the Uyghur skier has disappeared after finishing 43rd out of 65 in her ski games. Why would they do this? I thought that she was supposed to be the new face of Xinjiang, the new face of the Uyghurs, but it turns out that Dinajir Ilamujiang finished 43rd in her cross-country skiathon Olympic debut. The 20-year-old is one of 6 athletes from Altai Prefecture in northern Xinjiang. After finishing, she vanished from the spotlight and escaped a pool of journalists. This, of course, is after she lit the flame in China's propaganda attempt to deflect some of the guilty claims of genocide. So where did she go? This is exactly like what happened with Peng Shuai. Now, you notice that Peng Shuai has come out today and has been doing this whole forced confession where she says, oh, it was just a big misunderstanding. I didn't mean to claim that a CCP official had raped me. You guys took that out of context, really. But then if you actually look at the picture for Peng Shuai, and she's in this hotel room, right? She's standing next to a mirror. And if you look in the mirror, you can actually see the CCP handler who's standing right there looking at her, right? The camera caught it in the mirror, looking at her, arms crossed, making sure that everything she says is above board and everything she says is in full support of the party. Are you paying attention yet? Dissidents or people who don't fit with the program or people who are just become problematic for whatever reason, whisked directly away. And of course, we shouldn't be surprised from this. Again, we're dealing with a CCP regime, the same regime that has taken their authoritarian measures, right, and have infected the United States and the West writ large. We're going to talk in a minute about how you're seeing authoritarian measures now be used in Canada against peaceful truckers. Where do you think that brand of authoritarianism came from? We were told in the West that opening up to China would make China more democratic, it would make them more liberal, it would make them fall in love with our shared values. They keep saying that, shared values, like we share values with communists, right? I don't share values with communists. Do you share values with communists? No. They're communists. And what are they going to spread? They're going to spread the idea that if a government says, oh, there's a national emergency, well, if there's a national emergency, then we have to do something about this. And so you get people like Dr. Anthony Fauci, who were never elected to anything, who can have power and total control over you, over your life, over your children's lives, over your family's lives, even whether or not you can go across a border to a country that's right next door, like the US and Canada. And if you're a trucker, that means you can't go across the border. Understand what point in the movie we're in. Well, Canada's crackdown on the trucker uprising has begun. Yes, Justin Trudeau's allies are about to begin cracking down on the truckers, just like a Castro. Funny how that works. What's going on, actually? The Ottawa mayor has declared a state of emergency to deal with the trucking blockade. This is out of Reuters. Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson on Sunday declared a state of emergency to help deal with an unprecedented 10-day occupation by protesting trucks that has shut down much of the core Canadian capital. This reflects the serious danger and threat to the safety and security of residents posed by ongoing demonstrations and highlights the need for support from other jurisdictions and levels of government. Yeah, that's the Ottawa Mayor, Jim Watson. I think we see what's going on here. In the middle of night, and because there were reporters who were out there and actually caught this on tape, the mayor ordered the police to go in and start not confiscating or arresting anybody or ticketing people, and there were some tickets obviously given, but they confiscated the fuel supplies that people had brought in because they didn't want fuel and propane tanks to be given to them that they were using to stay warm during winter. They took the supplies away and they sent in riot squads to do it. Take a look.
God help that you could just switch sides and recognize what's going on. People, think about what's happening in this country. Sir, look at me in the eye. Look at me in the eye. Your little ones need to be protected. God, open your eyes, sir. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. Stand up for your freedom, sir. Stand up for your freedom, sir. Stand up for your freedom. Stand on the right side of history.
How's your mom feel about you?
They're also threatening to arrest anyone who provides material support to the trucker protest. So explain to me how that works. It's a protest, which is a lawful activity. It's not a legal activity. But when you declare a state of emergency under COVID-19, suddenly the government grants itself new powers. And the government gives itself the ability and the authority to declare anything that you do to be an illegal act, and then they say, oh, now we do have the authority to go and do this because there's a pandemic. You get it? They won't let it go, and they won't let you protest. They never did this. Throughout all the marches in 2020, Black Lives Matter, the rioting, the looting, the arson, never saw it. You never saw this done. And yet now they're gonna go in, they're gonna say, look, I was in Chaz 2020. In the summer, in June of 2020. They didn't go in and confiscate anything. They allowed it to happen. The police stood down. They were ordered to stand down by former Mayor Jenny Durkan, and there's a reason that she's a former mayor now. They allowed them to stand down. The people came in. They brought weapons with them. They brought arms. They brought rifles. And they killed people. They murdered people in the street in Chaz. You don't see that with the truckers. The truckers are up there dancing. They have bounce houses for the children, all right? This is Canada we're talking about here, right? These are Canadians. These aren't exactly the most confrontational people. They're known as being the nicest people on the face of the world. So that's why we say, when you know that Canadians are protesting, obviously things have gotten out of control. But of course, that's not all that's going on up there, because we just found out that the man who was charged in a Winnipeg car attack, an SUV, drove into the protest, striking people. The driver of that SUV has now been identified. What was his name? David Zegers, who has a history as an Antifa anarchist. So you understand, the media and Trudeau's allies have been all week saying racist, violent racist, violent racist, violent racist, violent racist, violent racist about the truckers. You know, my parents were actually talking to somebody that they know who is, isn't really a big news person, but maybe, when they do watch the news, it's either MSNBC or CNN or NPR driving in the car. Didn't even know about the truckers. Didn't know any of it even existed, and was shocked to find out this was happening. So when the media, the mainstream media, talks about the truckers, it's to smear them, but most of the time, they don't talk about them at all. But who's actually committing violence? Oh, it turns out that it's a member of Antifa. Again, are you seeing the government declare a state of emergency to go after Antifa cells? This is somebody who's taken into custody, a longtime activist with the extremist group Antifa. The front man, he's involved with a number of different groups. The Apple Cart Collective is the name of one of these groups, as well as performing shows for Antifa events and speaking out against insane calls for violence, complete calls for violence. That's who they stand for. The truckers just want freedom, and they just want to be able to do their jobs. And I'll tell you something right now. I would much rather live in a country controlled by truckers and farmers than I would in a country that's controlled by journalists and academics. We need one. We don't need the other. Explain to me why exactly we need journalists. What is the point? What purpose do they serve in a world where we have social media like this? Woo, not supposed to be asking those questions. So a massive saga played out over the last weekend regarding freedom of speech, and at its epicenter was the Joe Rogan Podcast. And the Joe Rogan Podcast has really become something that we haven't seen before in this country in a long time, right? Maybe Howard Stern in the 90s, right, or even early 90s could kind of be considered something like this. But Joe Rogan's podcast has become a cultural touchstone, a milepoint, a place where people can say, we'll listen to this and view it as a forum, more of a forum than someone who's, for one side or the other. And I think Rogan, and I say this as somebody who, just sees it from the outside, it looks to me that he runs his ship, he runs that forum as a place where people can come from either side and be fairly heard out. And that seems to be what he's driving for. Well, the left, of course, hates this. Corporate America, of course, also hates this. Why? Because they are in bed with one another. Remember, the point is not what you say. The point is your compliance. They don't want your apology. They want your groveling. They want you to know that they are above and you are below, that you do not get to make your own decisions. Your decisions are made for you. And that if you say or do anything that goes outside the line, you color within the lines, right? But if you go outside those lines, you get reined back in. Well, now they're trying to cancel Joe Rogan. They're pulling up this old clip where apparently in the context of quoting others, he used the N-word. But of course, when Joe Biden does that, President Biden, nobody cares. In fact, my own tweet of President Biden when he was Senator Biden dropping the N-bomb got a Twitter warning label attached to it. But none of the videos of Joe Rogan got a Twitter warning label attached to him. It's not hypocrisy, it's hierarchy. Above and below. How many times do I have to keep saying this? It's not left-right, it's up-down. There's one set of standards for them, and there's one set of standards for everybody else. And until you understand that, until if you understand there is a two-track system in the West right now, one for the authoritarian ruling class, one for everybody else, you will not understand what's going on. This is not about left versus right anymore. It's liberal, conservative, no. It's about the people with power and the people who don't have power. Now here's Joe Rogan. He made a response to this video.
Never use it to be racist because I'm not racist, but whenever you're in a situation where you have to say, I'm not racist, you f***ed up. And I clearly have f***ed up. And that's my intention to express myself in this video, to say, there's nothing I can do to take that back. I wish I could. Obviously, that's not possible. I do hope that, if anything, that this can be a teachable moment.
Now, as a result of this, Spotify has gone in and deleted over 100 episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience, back episodes. Some of them where people are even saying there weren't even racial slurs on them. What's going on? And they've deleted episodes in the past when he's had conservatives on. But Rumble just came out. So Rumble, which I love, I think is an incredible platform. Chris Pavlovsky is the guy who's heading that thing. They're moving down to Florida right now. All free speech. They just came out this morning and made a fantastic offer. They said, Rogan, you come to us, if you come to Rumble, we'll give you a $100 payday. So we'll buy out your contract from Spotify. You can walk away from them, and then no more censorship, no more rules, no more restrictions, no more cancellations. We have the infrastructure now, we have the parallel economies. And this is why I've told you that we need to construct parallel economies. And by the way, Rumble is not some conservative bastion, right? They've got Glenn Greenwald, they've got Tulsi on there, right? You've got plenty of people. I think Jimmy Dore does a show on there as well. So you've got plenty of people that are from the left, or the left of the aisle. But again, it's not about left or right anymore. It's about up and down. And so people who don't want to play off of the sheet of music that's being handed to them by the regime authoritarians. And you notice that's actually been the story, right, throughout the whole show today so far. The first one, authoritarianism, CCP. The second one, authoritarianism, Trudeau's allies cracking down like a Castro on peaceful protesters. And the third one, authoritarians again. Joe Rogan getting shut down by Spotify. Over 100 episodes, 300 hours of content gone, just gone. I think it's time for a Gen X uprising. It's absolutely time, and it needs to happen right now. Totally new and improved, the brand new MyPillow.com has been updated. I encourage you to go to MyPillow.com/Poso. You can find all the latest deals up there, all the flash sales. This thing does get updated on the regular, so go and check out what the flash sales. I think the last time I checked, the flash sales that were up were for the pillows and for the sheets, and then also for the towel sets, 6-pack of towels that you get for that. Obviously, with promo code POSO, you're gonna get huge savings. You know, this winter has been crazy. This week in DC, finally, we're getting a little bit of a respite, but I know to prepare before it happens, not after it happens. And that's why I go to MyPillow.com/Poso. I use promo code POSO. I use it myself, by the way, right? We use it for our family when we go to order stuff because we know that every little bit helps. It goes to American workers. And by the way, you know that when something's being shipped to you, it's being shipped by one of the truckers. MyPillow.com. Horrific story out of the New York Post. Biden's first year in office saw 73 police officers killed. The most deaths since 1995, the Clinton administration. So the Biden administration has seen the most police deaths since the Clinton administration. More cops killed in the line of duty during President Biden's first year of office than any other year since 1995. 73 officers. And by the way, this is intentional killings. We're talking about murders. 73 officers intentionally killed in the line of duty, a nearly 59% increase over 2020 when 46 cops were murdered, citing the FBI's database and officers killed in action. Now this is from Jason Johnson, the president of Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund, says, we believe it's a combination of the George Floyd protests and riots and a general feeling of preference for less law enforcement and less prosecution and less policing. Law enforcement officers have essentially been marginalized and demoralized and cast aside and encouraged now to enforce the law. And we've seen massive jumps in the homicide rates in cities across America. And this is obvious to anyone who's been paying attention. As I say on the show again and again and again, get out of cities. Get out of cities. We see what's coming. We see what's happening all around us. Open your eyes. It's not conservatives that are going into the inner city and killing each other and attacking and murdering police officers. Okay? This needs to stop. But until this does all come to a stop, our cities are becoming unlivable. Do not be there. Don't spend time there. And certainly don't bring your families there. But go listen. Go listen to President Biden when he was candidate Biden discuss on the campaign trail just how much he cares about our nation's police officers.
When your husband goes on a call that in fact is a 911 call, it's better if he or she has with them a psychologist or psychiatrist with them, someone who knows how to deal with someone who is not all there. And so there's a lot of things we should be doing. In addition to that, I also am proposing that we spend significantly more money on community policing. The reason it worked, my son used to be an attorney general of the state of Delaware. The idea is—
So show me one iota of actual feeling, empathy from this White House about the police officers being gunned down on their watch. These guys who played footsies with the defund the police movement. We knew it was going to happen. We told you this would happen, and now it's come to pass. Look, just get out of cities. The people there have voted for the situations that they're in. The people there want their cities to collapse, or they want to pursue these insane, lunatic policies. So if they want to bring the Bolsheviks in, and if they want to let the criminals out of jail, then let them, but don't be a part of it. And that is it. That's all the time we have for today. Human Events Daily. This is your fastest, most action-packed, high-value podcast that you're going to hear your daily briefing every single day. Remember our motto, our oath, our solemn vow to you. Be good, be brief, be gone. And your homework, share this out with one normie friend and then go leave us your 5-star review on Apple or Spotify or Rumble or wherever else you get your podcast until they shut us all down. But before we go, it's time for today's history break. Today, February 7th, 1962, President John F. Kennedy signed the executive order broadening the United States restrictions and it placed the embargo on Cuba. Why? Because the Soviet Union had placed missile structures and ballistic missiles on the island of Cuba in our own backyard, and we were threatened by this existentially. We then cut them out. This is our hemisphere, and we should be the ones who run it. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore. And that's it for us here today. Human Events Daily from the regime-occupied National Capital Region. We now turn it over to the free state of Arizona as Turning Point Live continues with The Couch. Take it away, John.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to TPUSA HQ in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm your host, John Root, and this is TPUSA Live. Here's what we're covering today. First, Stacey Abrams is the epitome of rules for thee and not for me, and more in the daily briefing. Next, Kanye West takes a pretty courageous stance against kids having social media. Then an Olympic update, including a missing Chinese Olympian. Finally, more info about the matchup between Joe Rogan and cancel culture, followed by crazy new laws and updates on the Freedom Convoy in Canada. All right, the wait's over. TPUSA Live from HQ starts now.
Authentic, unfiltered, grassroots content and conversation every weekday. Live from Phoenix, Arizona at the Turning Point USA headquarters, this is TPUSA Live.
Hey everyone, welcome back to TPUSA Live. We are at the mecca of conservatism, TPUSA HQ in Phoenix, Arizona. My goodness, you should see how we're trying to keep it together during commercial breaks and when we're off camera.
Getting our coughs out, getting our sniffles in.
The struggle is indeed
And I know
real.
every time Joe Bob's here, he's always trying to kick me in the leg or something like that. Because that's how we always kick off the show. But it's going to be great. We got Alex Clark, Isabel Brown, MAGA Hulk, Stephen Davis. We're going to get you up to date with the crazy things that are happening in our world. And shocker, we have a leftist elitist that says, rules for thee, but not for me. This viral photo of Stacey Abrams was all over social media. Check out all those kids. Telling parents, telling kids, mask up, but no, I'm gonna take mine off for this photo.
The emotion says it all for me.
She's
The
just
kids
not a
look
nice person.
So miserable. Like there's the little boy to the right or left of her that's with his mask on, and then she's just so happy, jubilant.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know she held her breath the whole time.
Oh, that's probably why she got away with it.
Yep.
Mayor Eric Garcetti, man, he trusts the science.
Trust the science.
Hold your breath, crew.
All of it.
I would love to see that. It's just like a news article comes out. Many leftist politicians pass out due to holding their breath for photos. I'd love to see that. That might happen in LA for the Super Bowl or something.
You never know.
Well, you know, even some leftists are saying, you know, this was really hypocritical of her. I thought she was smarter than this. And I'm like, really? I'm not shocked by this at all. Like, she is kind of comes across that way to me, is a little bit like selfish, whatever, you know, is going to look good for political reasons. Well, she thought this would look good for political reasons, her being around the kiddos, but then wearing the mask didn't look good. I mean, the whole thing is just stupid.
Well said.
Yes, exactly. It's ridiculous. And that was at Glenwood Elementary School in Atlanta. And then the campaign actually responded to that viral photo and said, it's shameful that our opponents are using a Black History Month reading event. Interesting how that
This has
how that
nothing
started.
to do with being black.
For Georgia children
How dare you?
for a false political attack, and it's pitiful and predictable that our opponents continue to look for opportunities to distract from their failed records when it comes to protecting public health during the pandemic.
You know, this was worse than me and Joe Bob. We were just talking about this the other day about us using a race car during the that Olympic
Influencer Olympics.
Yes, yes. And we literally, like Alex said, we literally had a little cardboard deal and it said race card on it. Okay, this is what this is. Race card, Black History Month, use it to our advantage. Race card. It's so ridiculous. We see right through it. We're not falling for it, Stacey. We're not doing it. Nope. Not doing it.
And look at the way every single one of them responds. You have Gavin Newsom that says, well, you know, I had it in my left hand. It's like, okay, we have video footage and photos of you. You did not have your mask in your left hand. Eric Garcetti, the mayor of LA, it's like, you didn't hold your breath, dude. There's no way. And then here, it's just like, I can't believe you would attack a strong Black woman during Black History Month. Or it's just like, no, we're asking about you being maskless.
She's so full of crap. The point is the hypocrisy. Not only is she a huge proponent of mask mandates, but she gets in there, doesn't wear a mask, talks to the kids, and everyone is maskless. And then we know from eyewitnesses that she then told her staff, hey, let's tell the kids to put their masks on for the picture, but I want to make sure that my mask isn't on. And so she literally asked that, and that's what's so stupid about it. And now they're trying to say, well, you're just coming after me, and it's terrible, you know, timing because it's Black History Month. Like, get out of here.
And using those kids to say, like, you know, in order to protect me, I need to make sure all these kids are masked up around me. It's ridiculous. Yeah. It's insane. But also, too, shout out to all the kids that are staging some walkouts and doing protests across the country. I know we're covering that quite a bit throughout this week, so a little teaser for you.
It's not, I'm not trying to I don't like personal attacks when it comes to politics, but I am just pointing, this is the truth, like what's obvious. Anyone, out of all the people in that picture, she is the one that is more at risk. So if anyone's going to have a mask on, it would be her over the kids. The kids are not at risk at all. And I don't like resulting to personal attacks, and I'm not trying to make it that way. I'm just saying, objectively, if one person had to wear a mask, it's her over the kids.
Exactly. But a good piece of news, the Notre Dame Cathedral in France is going to get rebuilt.
Oh, yay.
So, yeah, that is just a couple years ago, that 850-year-old church just about burned all the way down. They have about 35 architects working on that, and I'm told it's going to be ready for the Olympics in France in 2024.
Wow, that's really fast, actually.
Yeah. Have you guys been out to France before?
No, and this cathedral in particular has always been something that I've wanted to see, so I'm very sad I will never see the original one. But hopefully it's going to be just as beautiful.
Isabel wants to go to Paris and go to some cathedral. I want to go to Paris and go to Chanel.
True, you're not wrong.
I just want to eat a crepe every day.
That's right.
Just slam some baguettes and then be like, it was a great time and I saw the Eiffel Tower.
I want to wear my beret.
That would be a blast. Place I haven't been to yet. France, well done. I think the Olympics in France, better than Beijing. Coming up next, talking about Kanye West versus social media. See you in 90 seconds.
Good Ranchers, straight from the American farm. 100% American meat, 100% of the time. Delivered straight to your door.
Wait, are those my Good Rancher steaks? I'll be taking these.
Claim your 10 free bistro fillets with your next order with promo code TPUSA Live at goodranchers.com.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. We got MAGA host Stephen Davis, Isabel Brown, Alex Clark. I'm John Root. Time to talk about Kanye West. And luckily we got the pop culture queen with us because you cover all this stuff on POPlitics.
I do.
Cover it on the spillover. Everybody goes to you for this kind of stuff. And it sounds like he's making a pretty big stance when it comes to the separation with Kim Kardashian. Kim K wants to have the kids on social media, and Kanye's saying no.
Well, Northwest is 8 years old now, and I guess she is a TikTok that Kim has allowed her to have, even though the terms for TikTok is you're supposed to be at least 13 to have a page on there. And so Kanye is not happy because he says, I don't want my kids on social media. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's safe. And he feels like Kim has pretty much, since their separation, locked him out of the equation when it comes to making decisions for their kids. And he's not happy about it. And, you know, some people say, well, Kim is right. She's saying, why would you, bring this out in the open? This is a private issue. It's a family matter. Don't make this public. Some say Kanye is right because he's saying, an 8-year-old shouldn't have social media. I say we all win because they're airing this out publicly for us to enjoy. So there's always winners and there's always losers. But lucky for us, I love when people spill their private tea. So
yeah. So Alex, important question because I'm sure you know all the details about this. Is this a situation in which like a parent is running an account with content for their children, or does Northwest have total control over this account? Do we know?
I don't know that. I mean, she's clearly the one making the videos of herself, but I don't know if she has free reign to just scroll around on TikTok. I would guess yes, but I don't know. Obviously, she hasn't said.
So the question is, who's in the right?
Yeah.
Both, well, like I said, both of them are to the extent, but I believe I would side with Kanye on this. There is no excuse for a child to be on social media.
Exactly.
I mean, if you ask me, I don't think a kid should have social media until they're out of the house. I don't even think teenagers should be on it.
Did you have social media when you were a teenager?
Yes, I did. I had MySpace and Xanga before MySpace and Facebook and Tumblr.
I'm glad that we're on the same couch because MySpace was so cool.
I know what MySpace is.
Oh, Xanga.
Xanga was like a blog site that was before MySpace. I might be saying it wrong, but it was Xanga. I always said Xanga.
I
Interesting.
never heard of that.
Yeah.
I'm old, man. I still haven't heard
But
of
also,
that.
a lot when we were growing up, I didn't have social media easily accessible on my phone until probably college. Because, you had iPhones were coming out.
Okay, I totally did. The iPhone came out when I was in 6th grade, maybe. And I remember being so frustrated because all of my
Authentic,
friends
unfiltered,
had iPhones
grassroots
in
content
middle
and
school
conversation
and early in high school,
every
and I was
weekday,
begging
live
to
from
have
Phoenix,
an
Arizona.
iPhone to be able to do social media, to be able to post online. And our parents had a rule that you couldn't have Facebook until you were in high school, I think. I think I made a Facebook when I was in 8th grade, and Instagram came out when I was a freshman in high school, so I made an Instagram account as it was coming out. But that was totally normal. Granted, there were a lot of issues associated with it, and if I was a parent today, I wouldn't let my kid have social media until they were a teenager, probably 15 or 16. But that was a really big part of culture, and it was a really important way of connecting with the people that were in your generation. So I don't know. I don't know who I would side with in this. It also, I think, depends on, is this a parent-run account of cute pictures and videos of your kid? Because if that's the case, that's very similar to your own personal account, snapping a photo of your children and sharing it to the people who are following you, or are you just handing over the reins to a TikTok account to an 8-year-old? Those are two very distinct situations. I
think it's hilarious because you know how Kanye is, and he just airs out all the dirty laundry of the family. And he's screenshotting text conversations with Kim's cousins and stuff that are saying things like, Kanye, I really agree with you. And by the way, what about those new Yeezys? Do you think you could hook me up with that? And he literally says, don't talk to me about Yeezys right now. He included that conversation in his post. He's like, look at these clowns in the Kardashian family telling me secretly in text message, I agree with you privately, but also can you hook me up with Yeezys? And he's like, idiot.
Man, all the cousins always got an angle.
There's always an angle.
Like, no, let's talk about something that's important. I mean, I was happy that I grew up in a time where social media wasn't easily accessible. I feel like I had deeper connections, better relationships, and I wasn't as distracted.
Yeah, we all had MySpace or Facebook, but it was on desktop computers, and so you go to your friend's house, you go to a big sleepover, and there would be a desktop computer for that family, but it would be in a common area. It wasn't on any of our cell phones or anything until after we graduated. Right after I graduated high school is when people started downloading Instagram. So it made a huge difference, I think, instead of having, being able to be alone privately with a device.
Well, yes and no, though, because you also have to remember Instagram, as it is right now in 2022, is a dramatically different platform than it was when it was coming out in, 2011, 2012. The evolution of these apps becoming such a big part of your life and taking up so many hours of your day. I mean, on average, Gen Z is spending like 10 hours a day on their phone on these social media sites, TikTok especially. People will spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours on these platforms. That wasn't the case when this first started happening. You would take a cool picture and put this cool photography filter on it, and you would post it, and that was pretty much the extent of your interaction with people on social media. So I'm glad that I had exposure to it, and I'm glad that I had accounts on Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat as a teenager. I think it really brought our generation together in a really cool way. But now that everything has become so hyper-digitized in the time of COVID-19 and everything's online, I think our country is really hurting for some of that in-person interaction that we just don't have anymore.
And then Candace Owens had a pretty interesting take, too. I think she's also team Kanye on this one. She said there's no 8-year-old in the world that needs social media. Go color. I think I can agree with that a lot. I think there's an aspect of, I mean, kids right now, they're getting phones so young. They're on Snapchat, they're on social media. That's where all their friends are. And I just feel like it just starts devaluing real relationships. It's no doubt that, like, with us, we connect with a lot of people online too, and there's some people in like conservative circles that, we don't live near each other, but I think we're also older and we're able to handle that a little bit better. But I don't think there's any reason an 8-year-old should have this and then succumb to a lot of the crap that's on social media too. I mean, I don't really use Snapchat much anymore. I just got a few like friend groups.
I never use Snapchat
but
anymore.
You go to the Explore page and I mean, there's basically like pornographic stuff on there. And it's just like, what is this doing here? Like, no one needs to see this.
What's hurting Kanye at this point is, the problem with him is that he doesn't ever keep it to one subject, and that's just Kanye being Kanye. So I think everyone would agree with him and be on his side when it comes to North, but then he's putting in all this other random family drama, and they're like, Kim's accusing me of putting a hit on her, and all these other random things that nobody knows what he's talking about. He sounds crazy. And so then it like makes people like, you know what, I don't want to publicly take a side. If he would have only stuck to, hey everyone, I disagree with my ex-wife on our 8-year-old being on TikTok, I'm pretty sure he would have had way more A-list support. But nobody wants to come out now and support Kanye because he's also getting into all these weird personal rabbit holes about their personal relationship that we don't even know what he's talking about.
Well, that's a lot of his like new music too. I was like, what's happening here? Like after he came out with that like gospel album, it was kind of like these new songs.
Closed on Sunday. You want Chick-fil-A. Some of the best lyrics, man.
He's also
Kanye's
also pulling a race card, being like, Kardashians don't really care about black lives because look how they're attacking me as a black father.
Yeah, that's not okay.
And he said, I'm not playing about my black children anymore. Like really
playing up the
harping on them being mixed or being
Stacey
black.
Abrams without the mask vibe. That's all I'm gonna say.
So you don't have to do that to get your point across. I think we all understand that. At the end of the day, we don't agree with that. We don't agree with 8-year-olds having their own accounts and being all over social media. I didn't get on social media until I was like 19 years old. MySpace. good old MySpace. Lord, I miss MySpace. But and then the Facebook, and when you go on these different social media, especially at that time, like John was saying, it wasn't what it is now. What it is now is absolutely
it's a different
disgusting.
reality.
Yeah.
Remember our biggest worry was like who's going to be in our top 8 on MySpace?
I literally cannot
That was
relate
the
to a
best.
single part of this conversation.
That's unbelievable. You've never had MySpace?
No.
Ever?
MySpace was a thing when I was like 10.
Yeah, she's way
9
younger.
or 10.
Goodness.
You really missed out.
Yeah. It was good.
All you
times.
Gen Zers think like you have it so good now. I got all this technology.
Yeah. No.
We went out there and scraped our knees.
Yes.
Rode our bikes.
Yes.
I went over to my neighbors without texting them.
Imagine the Trump presidency on MySpace. Like if the Trump presidency would have happened in 2007, 2008, his top 8 would change every single day.
It would.
He would move. It would be like Steve Bannon, and then he would move. Oh, slot number 6, and be like Vice President Pence. He's number 2, and like now he's not on there anymore. Like it would be in real time. His little feuds and stuff he had. It would be so great to imagine that.
Maybe they'll bring it back. You never know.
There's also another aspect of this, the way that social media is catered and curated for kids. Yeah. I know we're going to talk about Joe Rogan on this show too. He had this social dilemma, guys. I don't know if you guys have seen that documentary at all.
Yep.
It's fantastic.
I love
he's
that.
talking about how there is aspects of obviously there's so much censorship in China and there's craziness going on over there, but a lot of stuff they feed kids is educational stuff. And then here it's a lot of just garbage dancing and just numbing your mind.
Literally.
Yeah, or just really
Christine Jurgen is a friend of all of ours. She's an ambassador for Turning Point USA. She has 2 really young daughters, and she posts all the time about how certain video apps or YouTube channels or whatever that have been certified and deemed as safe for kids, all of a sudden in an advertisement will start talking about being gender neutral or non-binary or being violently pornographic. I mean, it's really, really crazy. And so she has to snatch iPads and TVs away from her kids all the time because that stuff pops up everywhere. But I am the daughter of 2 lawyers, so I love playing devil's advocate. Just as one example of how social media, maybe not traditionally like TikTok or Facebook, could serve as a positive in a kid's life. Do you guys remember a couple years ago that the #1 revenue generating YouTube channel was about a little boy here in the United States? And the account was run by his parents, but he was reviewing toys. So he would play with the toy and talk about whether he liked it or not, what he liked about it, what he didn't like about it. That kid was making millions of dollars. Granted, his parents were running the account, but what a cool way to set your kid up for success, doing something that they love, not throwing them into the mix of the really negative side of social media, but using it as a tool to A, make people happy and bring some positivity into the world, but B, also use social media for what it is, a tool to help advance society and help advance your own particular life and career. I thought that was a really cool use of social media, and so I don't think this issue is black and white, not just in the race way that Kanye wants us to believe, but also in the metaphorical way. I don't think it's necessarily that social media equals evil or social media equals good. I think social media is a tool, and if you know how to use it, awesome, great. You have a responsibility as a parent to do so in your child's life and in your own life, but we can't just cast it out as this really horrible thing because it's not always that bad.
Yeah, and I think a situation like this, it's like Kim and Kanye, they're going to do whatever they want to do, so I don't think we're here saying, you guys have to do this, but I hope that they instill some of those values in there, because I feel like there's a false sense of connection, false sense of beauty, and false sense of, entrepreneurship at times, where it's it bums me out anytime that I talk to a young person, they're like, you know what, when I grow up, I want to become an influencer. What does that even mean? Yeah. That's what you want to do is you want a bunch of people to follow you, you want to get all these likes and comments and feel like in this world that people enjoy you there. I hope people find more emphasis or put more emphasis on who they are in person than who they are online. Yeah. But that's up to the parent.
Well, there's also a huge security risk when you're talking about an A-list star like someone like Kim Kardashian, having a kid that young on social media that doesn't quite understand how to filter things and talk about things with the press and the public watching. Mason Disick, Kourtney Kardashian's oldest son, had made a TikTok against his mom's wishes, during the pandemic, I believe, and
so
he was
rebellious.
saying super private stuff about their family and what they were doing, or just stuff that you wouldn't want, the public to know, like you're seeing your dirty house and doing just stupid stuff that kids don't think about. But when you have that many, eyes on you, millions of people in the world watching, that is a whole nother issue that celebrity kids deal with compared to a normal child whose mom is a nobody with 30 followers. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's a whole nother issue that people like Kim and the other Kardashian sisters have to think about when it comes to their kids.
You also got to look at the exploitive aspect of this. I mean, that's something I disagree with when it comes to these celebrity moms and celebrity parents, is that, when it comes to their children, they're putting their children out there for likes and comments and all of that. What's the daughter's name?
Northwest.
She has, 5 million followers, I do believe, on Insta. That is ridiculous.
That's insane.
That's insane.
Power of the Kardashians.
Why is there 5 million people following a child? So that gets me questioned. I just see something
probably know the answer
unsavory
to
about that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, people just follow that, and that's why I'm with you too. Is like, if you're gonna start using your kids as a product, I think those unboxing videos that kids does, they're super cute stuff out there, and it's fun, it's adorable.
And that's not exploiting your kid in a little
exactly.
mommy and me outfit and posting them on Instagram for 5 million likes.
Right.
I think that's a different situation.
Absolutely.
Because there is everybody's gonna have their own way about going about things, but I know we share stuff on What in the World Wednesdays sometimes. You want your kid to come out to people on the left are going to use their kid to push this nonsense, this woke agenda. And it's kids should not be subject to that at all. But coming up next, we're going to give you some updates from the CCP Olympics, including a missing athlete. See you in 90 seconds.
What if I told you that this has all happened before? The riots, violence, church burning, attacks on police, destruction of private property.
My name is Sammy Steigman. I am a Holocaust survivor.
This is the reality of what happens when you have capitalism that goes to socialism.
El socialismo no funciona. El socialismo no funciona.
TPUSA Live is about to be spicy. I mean, would you expect anything less? It's me, Alex Clark. Of course it's going to be spicy. Tune into The Spillover, my brand new podcast. Think of it like the older sister to POPlitics with a lot more conservative.
What's up, guys? My name is John Root, and every week I'm breaking down the top stories in sports and bringing you conversations you won't hear anywhere else. It's going to be a great time here on Breakable. Welcome back to TPUSA Live. Once again, we got Alex Clark. I'm John Root, Isabel Brown, Maga Hulk, Stephen Davis. We'll get you updated about what's going on with the CCP Olympics. We watch, so you don't have to. And the biggest news out of this, I think, right when the Olympics started, was there's a lot of people that aren't watching. They actually hit an all-time low in ratings. So they were down 43% from the South Korea Winter Olympics in 2018. Only 16 million people watched the opening ceremonies. And granted, remember, this is the biggest sporting event every single time. Winter Olympics or the Summer Olympics. And people didn't want to watch.
I feel like people haven't watched since London. What was that, 2012?
Yeah, I think
that
so.
That was the last big Olympics that I feel like people still tuned in.
I've literally never watched an Olympics ever.
Ever?
Me neither.
What?
Me neither.
Zero desire, don't care. I mean, but I'm not a sports person at
it's
all.
So patriotic thing.
But it's boring to me. I don't like sports, so I've never watched an Olympics.
Can't believe I'm sharing the couch with you.
I know.
Boring. Wow.
But
That's
I'm
a
not
hot take.
surprised. I just feel like all of those types of things, whether it's the Olympics or the Super Bowl or even award shows, nobody is really watching anything on cable, period.
Yeah, I know, that's true. TV's dead.
So that's the problem. We're all watching the Olympics through 20-second clips of highlights on Twitter. That's what we're watching. And that's just cable in general. Even the Bachelor views are down, everything.
Even Twitter. Twitter's losing people watching stuff and interacting and even just being a part of the platform. And what's interesting is NBC is live streaming on TikTok. People are live streaming on Instagram. The idea of TV is dead.
Wow.
And also, Twitter's pulling some shady business, too, because I know we showed you last week that there was a Uyghur athlete that lit the Olympic torch, and that's a cross-country skier. and they took down that video. They worked with the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, to take that down.
Really?
And they said it was disabled by Twitter Saturday morning, and now says this media has been disabled in response to a report by the copyright owner. And also, too, we mentioned earlier in the show that skier from China is not missing.
Yeah, well,
Oh, boy.
it's a girl, right?
Yep.
She's been disappeared,
Yeah.
which is what we said.
Yeah.
They used her. I knew this was going to happen. They used her to make the statement, and then back to the camp you go. I mean, that's probably what happened, or they killed her. Or she did something wrong that, they deemed like this wasn't perfect, you didn't do a good job, and they just...
Yeah,
Wow.
that's why I'm glad that that the viewership has dropped. I'm glad. I mean, especially when it comes to China. I mean, they're no great actor on the political stage. They're terrible. They're horrible. I mean, as far as the government, I'm not talking about the people, but I'm glad the viewership is down. I'm glad that people are responding in such a way. They don't want to see this. They don't want to support such a government. So I'm glad this is happening.
I didn't know Twitter had deleted that video. I knew the athlete was missing and that they can't find her for any follow-up media interviews or anything.
They need the Twitter video gone because they don't want people to know her face or recognize her.
See?
They need people to forget she ever existed.
Yep.
It's scary stuff.
That is wild, because even just a few days ago, we were talking about how that was such a great PR stunt by the CCP to say, look, we care. We're not doing all these horrible things.
And they turn
and
around
in
and
just
do
a
this.
few days, they're now erasing all the footage of that?
That's scary.
Crazy.
And then even, we've talked about Peng Shuai. A lot like Peng Shuai is obviously a female tennis player, still one of the best and top in the world, in the top 50. And she went missing for a while, and then she came back on the scene. She wasn't there for the Australian Open. I know this isn't a part of the Winter Olympics, but it's CCP pulling some nonsense. She came out, I think it was yesterday or maybe the day before, and said the whole sexual assault allegation with that CCP official, enormous misunderstanding.
Oh my
Re-education,
gosh.
huh? A little re-education, that's what it is.
Yeah, so she talked to a French news outlet and said that. That was her first interview outside of Chinese media.
Well, all of this just goes to show you how powerful the CCP really is. I mean, they wield so much influence, not just in the geopolitical sphere, but culturally, all across the world, that they can disappear someone, immediately have all of the footage erased from social media as if it never happened. I'm also really curious. Beijing has now hosted the Olympics in 2008, the Summer Olympics, and now in 2022 for the Winter Olympics. How common is it for the same city to host Olympics in that short of a time frame?
First time.
Is this the first time ever?
First time they use the same venue too for the Summer and Winter Olympics.
there
So
you
when
have
you
it.
look
Interesting thought.
when you look at photos and videos of the opening ceremonies, that nest, it's beautiful architecture. I will give it that. But the fact that just the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, governing bodies across the world, they have allowed China to do whatever they want.
They had to make fake snow. It's literally not even cold enough for the Winter Olympics right now. I mean, it's cold, but it's not snowing. The conditions are not good for any of our athletes.
No.
How does that make sense as another location for the Olympics? It doesn't make sense.
A sport that I know you haven't watched, but giant slalom is where they go down this really steep hill and they're going back and forth. There were skiers that were saying, we hate the conditions here.
Everybody's falling. They're falling and really hurting themselves.
It's dangerous.
I saw more. I will say this. So my boyfriend last night flipped it on. It was ice skating. And I saw more people fall in that short amount of time I've ever seen. The ice skaters kept falling and stuff. I've never seen people make mistakes like that in the Olympics. But yeah, I don't ever regularly watch. It's just like, if I've ever seen it, it's like on because somebody else has it on briefly around me.
And funny you bring up ice skating because there's been a few American defectors. Few people that forego their American citizenship to join Team China.
Yikes.
And one of those figure skaters used to go by Beverly Zhu, now is Zhu Ji, said, I don't want to be known as an American. I'm going to join Team China.
Good luck.
Good luck with that.
Fell twice.
Yeah.
I think we have a video or a photo of that, excuse me.
Yeah,
Fell
she's probably
twice.
being fed to the animals now or whatever they're going to do with her because she fell.
Got the
I actually
lowest
feel
score.
really bad for her. She's what, like 19 or 20? She's really young. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But she has now thrown away not just her ability to be a professional athlete here, but be a United States citizen. She doesn't speak Mandarin, so it was trending on Weibo, I don't know how to say it, the Twitter version in China, that she's not really a Chinese citizen and that she shouldn't be accepted, and her patriotism is really offensive because she can't even speak the language. This poor girl's entire reality is now flipped upside down because somebody talked her into this being a good idea.
I don't feel bad for her.
She was born and raised in San Francisco. And
she's an idiot, to me.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people like that, I know we were covering it on the Breakaway podcast today, like people like that are just going to just forego their citizenship, just like, don't come back here. Yeah. Like, you want to join Team China?
I mean, it's hardly difficult to not blame her, though. I mean, this girl is growing up in a time where we are told the most evil thing on earth is the United States of America. I mean, maybe she genuinely didn't know. And obviously she's an idiot for making that decision, but we're all idiots at age 19 or 20.
If she genuinely thinks that
every young person genuinely thinks that. Go ask any 19-year-old in the United States if they'd rather live in China or the United States. The answers will surprise you.
I would love to chat with her.
Why do you think so many athletes are defecting from the U.S. to go compete for China? Because they genuinely believe that communism is the answer.
And then they get there and they realize.
And it's horrible.
Yeah, exactly.
It's awful. And now these poor kids are getting disappeared, put in the gulags.
Yep.
And then there's terrible conditions too. So we're hearing news out of the Olympic Village that I know there was a Belgian skeleton. So skeleton is when you're in that basically just like mini sled, and you're going down this bobsled track basically. And she got put into quarantine because she tested positive for COVID, and she ended up posting a video about that, and it was just gut-wrenching. Hearing what she had to say, she was crying, and we actually have that video right now. Let's check it out.
Another 7 days with 2 PCRs a day and no contact with anybody else. I am allowed to slide alone. We are not even sure I will ever be allowed to return to the village.
And that was Kim Leemans from Belgium once again. And I mean, she got put into an ambulance. She got put into this quarantine zone, and she has no idea where she is, what's going to be happening. And it's just another example that we shouldn't be out there. Other countries shouldn't be out there. Not only are our athletes in danger because the climate's not a good place to even be doing these sports, CCP's doing whatever they want. It's terrifying to me. It is absolutely insane. But we'll definitely keep you updated on that. And I know, especially from the sports side, something that Alex Clark isn't going to watch. It's okay. don't you worry. We're going to keep you updated on this show and on Breakaway about what's going on with those CCP Olympics, because this is just the start. It's going to get crazier and crazier. But coming up next, we're talking about the matchup between Joe Rogan and cancel culture. See you in 90 seconds.
Hey everybody, how you doing? My name is Osiga Kaku. I'm from the great state of North Carolina, and I'll see you at freedomsquare.com.
My name is Preston Para, and we'll see you at freedomsquare.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle Clare from Bolingbrook, Illinois, and I will see you at freedomsquare.com.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie. I'm from Fayetteville, Arkansas, and we'll see you at freedomsquare.com.
Hi, I'm Johnny Richardson. I'm from Prescott, Arizona, and I'll see you at freedomsquare.com.
I'm Rachel. I'm from Dallas, Texas, and you'll see me at freedomsquare.com. I'm Soraya. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and I will see you at freedomsquare.com.
My name is Michelle DeGroot from Los Angeles, California, and I'll see you at freedomsquare.com.
Hi, my name is Emma Faye Redcan, and I'm from San Antonio, Texas. I will see you at freedomsquare.com.
Join us in the fight for freedom. Welcome to Freedom Square.
Hey, yo, welcome back to TPUSA Live. If you have not seen that video, you are really missing out.
Yes, indeed.
All about Byron. Beans, rice, Jesus Christ, and Byron. It's a really, obviously I know we posted some of that stuff on social media. It's a NY Side Talks. and it's about these like NYU film students that just interview people around New York.
They go out to Staten Island and just talk to people. Coney Island, not Staten Island.
Yeah.
Coney Island. It's its
some
own breed of
cauliflower.
people, man.
Yeah, it is.
It's out of control.
Very
Look it up right after we finish this show. Magna Hoax, Stephen Davis, Isabel Brown, Alex Clark. I'm John Root. Let's talk about Joe Rogan.
Woo!
I know you. I want to start with you because I feel like you've been going off on social media, obviously sharing this a bunch on POPlitics. I think you have a important and interesting view about Spotify when it comes to this whole situation. We'll break down the apology from Joe Rogan, how they're taking down some episodes and everything, but explain your take a little bit more.
The summary is I sniffed out the fakery and the foolery from the get-go. I never believed Spotify when they posted that statement at the end of last week saying, like, we're for free speech. We'll never try to censor Joe Rogan. We'll always have his back. And then increasingly over the weekend, more and more things happen. Over 100 episodes have been deleted. The CEO is saying that he's standing with Joe Rogan, but then also apologizing to their employees and saying, well, now we're going to give $100 million, the matchup of his salary to minority groups and nonprofits. You know, everything he's doing is basically undermining Joe Rogan. Are you really standing with him? Do you really think he's a good guy? Do you really stand with free speech? Why do you feel the need to kind of backtrack and do all these other things? And so all of that gave me a weird taste in my mouth, and I didn't understand why conservatives were rah-rah Spotify. Finally, we have a social media platform that's standing with us. I'm like, I don't know where you got that idea, but I definitely was weary of that. And then over the weekend, you know, with everything, the social media cancellation campaign to get Joe Rogan because of the N-word video, that was crazy to me, and it just keeps going, and I'm like, they're not going to stop. And so my prediction is I do not think Joe Rogan, whether it's him leaving or Spotify firing him, I don't think he makes it till the end of his contract with Spotify is my prediction.
You think they're going to breach contract?
It's possible if the heat in the kitchen gets too high.
Well,
That's
breach
what I
of
think.
contract's a strong term legally, too. I mean, there's probably clauses in that contract that allow for the contract to be ended.
What, how many times he says the N-word?
Well,
in previous episodes that they already
there's
put out there?
There's probably morality clauses. I mean, they can argue their way out of that.
Because that's
pretty
where
easy.
it came from. Is just like, obviously, there was a tweet about this, and it's like, hey, you got to see the manipulation behind this and how it's structured. It's like they're first going to say misinformation, and then they're going to say that he's racist, and then probably the next thing they're going to do is say that he's homophobic, and it's going to keep going down the line until it's just like, this guy's morally inept, morally corrupt, and we have to get rid of him.
Well, I guess years ago, Ben Shapiro and Dave Rubin, from what I hear, both were telling Joe, because they've both been guests on his show multiple times, they said, you realize they are coming for you. There will never be a time that they're not coming for you. And Joe's response was, no, they won't. I'm a comedian. I'm not doing politics. I'm a comedian. Ben and Dave Rubin were trying to explain, you don't understand. You're not in lockstep with the groupthink of the left. It doesn't matter what you call yourself. They will find you and end you. A little Liam Neeson. They're going to get you. And look what's happening now. The videos of him saying the N-word and stuff, you know, which we can talk about context or whatever. But the point is, those were arguably times when he was a comedian. But like, how can you say, well, I'm just a comedian when you're having 3-hour episodes with Dr. Malone on vaccines? I'm sorry, but like, that was a very serious episode. That wasn't comedy. I mean, he's having conversations that toe what's culturally acceptable. Of course the left is going to come after him. So I feel like there's a little bit of ignorance on his part, and I think a lot of that comes from him being a diehard moderate. You cannot live in I'm always in a gray area when it comes to culture and life. There's going to be moments where you're going to have to take a hard stand. And this is one of those times he should have known not to kiss the left's butt.
I don't think he's not taking a stand. Do you genuinely believe through this process he's not taking a stand?
He apologized. He said,
for
I agree.
potentially offending people, but he said, but I'm always going to have hard conversations, and I'm always going to invite the experts on my show.
And he said he agrees with the disclaimers on his episodes where he talks to anyone that the left doesn't deem as an expert. That's
all right. Well,
that's
in that vein, that's still taking
happy.
a stand. That's taking a stand in the side of censorship.
He's not showing a backbone. he will show a backbone if he accepts Rumble's offer for a $100 million deal to go to them. But I don't think he will
He'll
either.
never do that because that's horrible for his career. It's a great, brilliant idea for Rumble to offer Joe Rogan, which they did today, by the way, in case you didn't hear that. $100 million over the next 4 years to move his entire show to the Rumble platform, free from censorship. Genius marketing idea from them, and if he was to accept it, genius business strategy for them because countless people will flock to this new platform. Hopefully they can make the interface a little bit better. It's not great, and they have some kinks to iron out there. But from Joe Rogan's perspective, he has 11 million people listening to every single episode of his show. The vast majority, easily 95% of which I would argue are not on Rumble. Why would he leave expecting that everybody's going to follow him, knowing that they won't, because anytime you make a big transition from platform to platform, you're not going to take everybody with you. That's a horrible strategy from his perspective. So I don't think that he's going to do that. If all of a sudden everybody flocked to Rumble, which would make me really happy, I would love to see that happening, but we're not seeing that right away, then it might make more sense.
With Spotify, I think the writing's written on the wall. So like when you're in Joe Rogan's position, do you say, okay, I'm going to stay with this, one of the biggest platforms in the world, knowing I have there will be a time where this comes to an end inevitably. Or I take the gamble and just pray the majority of my listeners will follow me. He's in a lose-lose situation. I don't think he ever should have signed with Spotify from the get-go. I think that was a mistake.
That's an interesting take.
I as soon as he did that, I was like, well, he's done. And then, they took off his Alex Jones episodes and all this. And now you have the left coming up with this list of all the guests he's had on and said, look, he's only had this many people that were actual leftists, then he's had all these people that were conservative. You know who they're complaining about who's conservative that he's had on? People like Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not even conservative.
And that's someone that's on Rumble, too.
Or
this would make me happy. Long story short, it would make me really happy if everybody flocked to a new platform like Rumble that's really fighting the cancel culture mob. It's fighting to keep woke cancellation out of all of this content. But I think that takes time. It's not an overnight solution. And so I think from his perspective, if I was wearing Joe Rogan's hat right now, I would say, and I don't know what the terms of the deal would look like, but I'm anticipating it's probably an exclusive deal like what he has at Spotify. Would I exclusively move all of my content to a platform where most of my audience doesn't live?
I just don't understand. If you're Joe Rogan, you've made enough money. Now your kids, he's not ever going to have kids, but your kids are set. Your grandkids hypothetically would be set. It's not about the money at this point.
Well, Joe Rogan has kids, doesn't he? He has a daughter. He has a daughter.
Okay, so maybe he does. I didn't know. But he's set basically for his family for generations is set. So why don't you take a chance? He has all these buddies, Elon and all these people. I don't even know that taking the deal with Rumble is the right decision either, but he could leave and break his contract with Spotify and then just make his own thing.
Great.
Absolutely.
I'd love to see that.
I feel like that might be the best decision.
That's why I would agree with you. I don't think him going to Spotify was a good idea. Like that whole exclusive deal, I didn't like that. I think diversify your audience, be in so many different places. I am totally with you there. But obviously, you get a big payday, and it's a good thing for Spotify. It's a good thing for him at the time. But that's why I feel like he's had such a courageous stance in so many ways. And then now you have people like The Rock that are having to say things about him now too. I don't think we should be attacking The Rock like crazy, but I think there are people that have his back at the same time though. There's some people that are going to stomp on his grave. But I think when you give the left an inch, they are going to take a mile. It's this isn't going to be enough. We're going to need another apology for some other episode that they dig up here. Just look at the compilation of that N-word video.
But you have to understand too, the N-word video of Joe Rogan was created by Patriot Takes, which is owned by, what is that thing called? Midas Touch or something like that media, which essentially is a leftist super PAC. So their whole thing is to raise money and make money to elect certain people and come out against certain politicians, and they're all on the left. And so this is really, you have to understand that all of this, it's not just cancel culture. It is a strategic political takedown of somebody who has way more power than they could ever imagine when you're coming up on midterms, when you're coming up on the presidential election in 2024. They can't risk him having fair interviews with all of these potential candidates and exposing them for the frauds that they probably are, on the left or the right. But he also has way more listeners in one episode, like Isabel said, than CNN could ever dream of having.
Yeah.
This guy, like I said on Friday, the 3 most powerful people right now that, have the most influence on American people are Dave Portnoy, and Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
So they've got to take down all of these people. You have Business Insider trying to get Dave
Elon
Portnoy.
would probably have to be in there,
Yeah,
right?
I said that on Friday, too. Yeah. But I'm just saying, though, these people, they need them out. With them, there's still a chance, there's still a glimmer of hope for people to be free thinkers in any capacity. And so they've got to squash them with whatever means
That's
possible.
why I hate that he apologized, because for
Thank
so
you.
long it was just like, you can't do anything to me, you can't touch me, I'm uncancelable. And then now there's like a little bit of victory that they feel. That's like, look it, we got to the guy that thought he could chat with anybody, he could say anything and get away with it. That's why I feel like that's so detrimental.
I don't know. I don't really buy into that apology video that much. I mean, if every A-list celebrity is going after you, every single news outlet is going after you, every single podcast is going after you, every single blue check mark from both sides of the aisle is tugging you in either direction, like, he's ours, he's ours, he's ours. Just say a quick little thing, get it over with, and move on. This reminds me so much of the Morgan Wallen debacle of, oops, you got caught on tape saying the N-word, which was horrible and should not have happened. Months later, he comes out and does a little apology video, but during that entire time before an apology happened, he became the #1 streamed artist on Earth. Like, literally more people listened to Morgan Wallen in the midst of this cancel culture conversation than any other artist, except maybe Drake, who had similar streaming numbers to him last year in 2020. So, look, if you have to say a little apology video to move on, I understand where he's coming from. I wouldn't have done the same thing, but I can at least understand why he felt the need to make a short little video and move on with his life and go back to saying, okay, I'm going to go talk about what I'm going to talk about now.
And I'm sure on the next podcast, he's maybe going to explain it a little bit more too. Like, hey,
He's already released, this is the thing too, he's already released a podcast since all of this. It's just a normal podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think all of this is just a lot of media distraction, pointing the finger at somebody because they don't want us to focus on other things.
Yeah, I mean, you're so upset about somebody that has the freest, most honest conversations we've seen in media, maybe ever, and long-form discussions unlike anybody has ever done. But the Taliban's still on Twitter. You have people like Dr. Fauci and the President of the United States lying to you about COVID, like real misinformation.
Also, think of some of the biggest leftists that have said the N-word and or worn blackface. Howard Stern, Jimmy Kimmel, Joy Behar. They've all done this, but yet how come they've never, their whole apology tour or whatever was so quick, so fast that everyone got over it. The Joe thing's being dragged out.
Well, those people are like Howard Stern are effective for the left.
Right.
That's the thing. It's like they're able to use him as a tool, and he still has such a huge platform that they're just like, well, we can't cancel him. It's like, nah, we're going to let that slide. Sure, do your thing.
Well, it's so ambiguous, the rules for canceling and whatnot. I mean, you get canceled if you have the right, or if you espouse anything of the right, or anything that is culturally inappropriate to the left. But yet,
or at least sit down with people from the right. Just at least like break bread with people from the right.
Absolutely, it's so. But I'm sorry, I'm 100% against Joe Rogan apologizing. He should have never. As soon as you apologize, they pounce on you because now there's an admission of guilt. He should have never done that, and I think he really did a disservice to free speech, to his stance. I mean, I'm so much against this guy. As popular as he is, as big as he is, the fact that he bent the knee even a little bit, you cannot do that when it comes to the left. They're going to cancel you regardless.
But you know what else is so stupid, Stephen, is that, who are you apologizing to? None of his fans care. His 11 million followers,
no, they don't care.
They know who he is. They know about his old acts. They understand the context of the conversation, him quoting other people, whatever. Like, none of them were upset with him. So who are you apologizing to? You're apologizing to these 3 brothers who run Patriot Takes, who are doing a political hack job against you. And what's the point?
Cared.
That's the question. And I think that's a really important question. What is the point? I hope that from this conversation, at least we can take away what's been so frustrating in the last few days is watching the right jump all over Joe Rogan like he is our advocate for free speech. He is the chosen one. We will follow Joe Rogan forever. The left's jumping all over Joe Rogan like, oh, he apologized. He's a Bernie bro. We have to make sure that he's the defender of our causes for the next generation. This is so much bigger of a conversation than conservative versus liberal and partisan politics. The idea of protecting free speech and having these conversations has to be bigger than that going into the future.
And I know Jack brought that up on Human Events. It's not left or right, it's up or down. Coming up next, one last thing.
You have to ask the question, how is the most heavily funded tribe have the poorest population?
Listen to me. My country's very because everything problem here. Don't have petroleum for bus and Cuba, for car, for drive, for nothing.
And it sucks. Socialism sucks. There's no other way you can describe it.
Do you like guns? Do you like ammo? Do you like suppressors? Do you like freedom? Do you love America? Do you like baseball? Do you like rifles? Do you like 9mm? Do you like pistols? Join me, Paige Rue, every week on Reloaded.
Good Ranchers, straight from the American farm. 100% American meat, 100% of the time. Delivered straight to your door.
Wait, are those my Good Rancher steaks? I'll be taking these.
Claim your 10 free bistro fillets with your next order with promo code TPUSA Live at goodranchers.com.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. These 3-minute long commercial breaks before one last thing. We could probably put together a nice 3-minute show about that. And
We're going to jail.
right to jail.
Right to jail, right away.
Back home, Stephen Davis, Isabel Brown, Alex Clark. I'm John Root. We got to talk more about the Freedom Convoy. There just is more news coming out there. Honk, honk. We want them to keep honking, keep rolling, and go against these vaccine mandates, but that's actually not what the Canadian government wants them to do. So we're going to show you a few videos here. First, what they're trying to do is they're allegedly trying to cut off fuel to that convoy of truckers. So this first video we're going to show you is a lot of people with gas cans. Check it out. Yeah, and you see all those gas cans there, and then they are in Ottawa, so that's where like the final stop was. That's where there's the capital of Canada. And I mean, it's inspiring a lot of convoys across the world too.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get to that, you might have heard some honks there too. This is wild. I know we were saying at the beginning of the show, there's like some crazy new laws. A Canadian court issued a 10-day injunction against the use of air horns and honking. So this is how they responded. Check this out. This is amazing. You gotta love it, dude. And then those videos are courtesy of Post Millennial over there, always doing some great work, making sure people get the good information, get the truth. It seems like nothing's gonna stop these guys. Honestly, if they had a Spotify podcast, I don't think they'd apologize.
I feel like the government's going to say it's illegal to bring them food next.
I know.
Well, so yeah, right now they're seizing all the gas.
Yep.
And saying we're gonna take this, which doesn't make any sense to me. I brought this up in the intro. If you don't want an occupation of truckers in Ottawa, why are you taking away the thing that is necessary for them to drive away? Seems a little odd to me.
I didn't think that
but I bet they will start saying that. They'll say that we're going to start fining you, or you can't eat here, or whatever, just to do anything to get them to leave.
Also, Canadians too, like, how are you going to get your food? You probably need a trucker to get that food out to you.
That's true.
But look who's leading the charge. Truckers.
Woo!
I mean, you can't beat that. I mean, and that's the thing that, we really got to take solace in, is the fact that we have people who are truckers who are really standing up for what they know to be right. I mean, standing up for things that we've been preaching about for so long. And guess who answers the call? And guess who's still answering the call despite not having any fuel, despite soon not being able to get any food, despite soon probably not even being able to breathe air because it's going to be illegal? The truckers, they've been holding it down. I hope they continue doing so, because this is fantastic. I love this.
And they're actually inspiring farmers to come now, too. I don't know if you guys saw the videos of green tractors rolling up in Ottawa to the trucker convoy. It is awesome.
They got cowboys rolling through, too.
Like, amazing.
They got everybody. It seems like the Wild Wild West story here.
I know. I love it.
Wild Wild West of freedom.
I'm all about it.
You'd love to see. Also, there's places like London, Greece, and New Zealand that are actually having their own little trucker convoys.
Come on.
And here, allegedly. It might start happening from LA to DC.
Yep. It's amazing. And I think we might have a video of London.
Ooh.
I think we got some of those truckers there we can show you.
They're trying.
Awesome.
I love if someone's wearing a Lakers hoodie out there in London.
Hey,
That's the first thing I noticed,
Of course
obviously.
you would notice that.
But it's crazy to me as we wrap this up is you have truckers that are doing more for freedom than anybody in the Canadian government. You got kids at high schools that are doing more to go against mass mandates than anybody in state or federal government. And honestly, we don't like that Joe Rogan apologized, but I think he's doing more for freedom of speech and actually giving people a seat at the table to talk about real issues than anybody else in media, no matter what Brian Stelter says. I'm sure he's shaking in his boots about you, Brian.
He is.
Good luck with CNN Plus, but it's pretty incredible to see what these truckers are doing. It's pretty inspiring.
It is inspiring.
Yeah.
Can't wait to keep seeing it.
Honk,
Let's
honk,
go.
honk,
Honk, honk.
baby.
Let's go.
I keep
Let's
wanting
go.
to say, give me a toot-toot, give me a beep-beep, and then I'm like, oh, that's R. Kelly. He's canceled.
Cancel. Everybody's canceled.
Actually, too, and then I know the producers were telling us back there, we have a little bit of breaking news that it sounds like the Spotify CEO is not going to be parting ways with Joe Rogan. Sounds like he might have had a statement out there. I'm sure you can go check that out online, but I think they're standing behind Joe Rogan a little bit more. Obviously, we're going to take that with a grain of salt. Alex Clark, don't worry. Don't worry. But hey, coming up next, we got Freedom Papers with Morgan Zegers with special guest Connor Clegg of the Charlie Kirk Show. It's been a great show. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Welcome to our first ever political correctness and inclusivity training. First off, safety. Just want to make sure that everyone here is jabbed. right? Just kidding, none of my business. So I'm Dylan, I'm your HR rep. A little bit about me. I'm a white man, and I'm so sorry if that makes any of you uncomfortable. On to the first order of business today. We're gonna be talking about diversity. And Josh, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Donde está la biblioteca? I'm from Colorado. I learned that from Dora.
Okay, second order of business. This is a mental health friendly workplace. Yes, Alex.
If we're really a mental health friendly workplace, what are we doing about the suicide rate of the birds? Because I saw 2 dead birds in the parking lot yesterday.
Alex, shut up.
Yeah, there's been a really big disregard for the bird lives ever since people in the office started sharing the birds are not real meme. Birds are definitely real. The government's putting chips in their brain, which is making them self-destruct and kill themselves, and we have to be talking about the real issues, or what are we doing here at all? Bird lives matter.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
That's what BLM stands for. That's not what it stands for.
She brings this up every time.
Why is Mitchell in a Pope concert?
Why are the snacks always feel like it?
I think this went really well. All in all, this is a great place to work, and we're becoming more politically correct every single day.
All right, you guys, welcome back to another episode of Freedom Papers, hosted by me, Morgan Zegers, powered by Turning Point USA, and let's just call you an honorary co-host at this point. Connor Clegg, how's it going?
It's going really well. How are you?
I'm good. I haven't seen you in forever.
I know.
I mean, it's been quite some time because we stopped filming for the holidays. I'm really excited to be back.
It's great to be back. Great to be here. Great to be talking about a really good Federalist paper.
Yeah, we're talking about number 15, and we'll get into that. But first, Connor, I got you a Christmas present, and then now it's end of January, and I haven't seen you since before Christmas because we had America Fest, and then things just ended. Now, this was the big bucks, okay?
This is so exciting.
I know the price is right
You
on
paid
the
for this
back.
in male deer?
But I got you your own Charles Kessler version of the Federalist Papers.
Everyone should have one of these. Not everyone has a Morgan to gift it to them,
Mm.
but everyone should have one. Thank you, Morgan. That's
You're
so sweet.
welcome. It's my favorite version,
God
and
bless you.
so I just really liked it, and I really appreciate you coming on. I mean, we really grab Connor from his desk when he's working during the workday and just ask him to come on because it's enjoyable. I don't know about you guys. Maybe let us know in the reviews and the comments, but I really love having Connor on. It's a personal favorite of mine, a little addition to the day.
Well, I
now, you
enjoy it.
guys, we have a fun episode today because we're doing a little history lesson, Connor. We have to do a little deep dive into the Articles of Confederation, and then we'll get into Federalist Paper number 15, because we're entering a new phase.
Yes.
And as we enter that new phase, let's look at what Publius says, introducing this in number 15 as we enter this phase. He said, "In the course of the preceding papers, I have endeavored, my fellow citizens, to place before you in a clear and convincing light the importance of union to your political safety and happiness. I have unfolded to you a complication of dangers to which you would be exposed, should you permit that sacred knot which binds the people of America together to be severed or dissolved by ambition or by avarice, by jealousy or by misrepresentation. The point next in order to be examined is the insufficiency of the present Confederation to the preservation of the Union. It may perhaps be asked what need there is of reasoning or proof to illustrate a position which is not either controverted or doubted, to which the understandings and feelings of all classes of men assent, and which in substance is admitted by the opponents as well as by the friends of the new Constitution." What the heck is he saying there? Well, number 15 is titled "The Insufficiency of the Present Confederation to Preserve the Union." It was written by Hamilton, of course, pen name Publius, and we are entering the new section of papers, 15 is the first one of them, that talks about the different failures of the Articles of Confederation. Connor, initial thoughts.
Well, my initial thoughts here are the Articles of Confederation were very weak, and they were intentionally made to be weak because we had just broken free from the tyranny of King George. And so folks were naturally apprehensive. But this was the first instance, I think, in the history of this young republic where we said, it's okay to be scared, but it won't work. We have to be bold. We have to take a leap. and we have to go where no man has ever dared to go before. And we did it hundreds of years later when we went to the moon, but it all started right here with Federalist 15.
Ah, way to bring that in.
Yeah,
okay.
We
All
love the
right.
moon.
Well, before we get into the paper, like I said, we're going to do a history lesson because I don't know about you guys, the Articles of Confederation is not exactly a hot, discussed topic in American history class. I think it should be because it shows that people learn their lessons. We rewrote for a specific reason, and that, there's trials and tribulations. You have to have mistakes, and it's okay to address mistakes. Right. That's what I loved about it most, and I think it might have been in paper 2, Connor, but the Federalists, when they're writing, they say, listen, you guys trusted us when we declared independence. You trusted us to write this first attempt at government. We're asking you to trust us one more time as people that have now fully experienced the failures to rewrite and fix those problems. Will you trust us one more time? Right. And that was a very humbling thing to have to admit and then ask again for a second chance. Now, I want to give you guys a quick rundown on the Articles of Confederation. So, the last copy was written in 1777, a year after declaring independence in 1776. But it was rushed, okay? We've discussed that before in other episodes. It was rushed because it was written during a time of war, and so there's massive urgency behind it. And then it wasn't ratified, actually, until 1787, March 1st. That's the thing. Because they had just gotten out of a very bad situation with a monarchy, the people were very apprehensive to support creating any sort of federal government. And so they ended up making a very weak federal government via the Articles of Confederation. And by federal government, I guess I'm misspeaking there, but they made a sort of conglomerate where they had centralized power of some sort. And even that, even though it was weak, scared the people still because they didn't want a King George repeat. Now, I will say I value Freedom Papers so much because I was looking on YouTube trying to learn more about the Articles of Confederation and stuff. And wow, people try and be like hip and cool and they make the cringiest videos. I was listening to one guy and he was like, we had a hangover from monarchy. I was like, what? You think young people are going to just enjoy if you use party slang throughout the history lessons? No, just be a normal person.
Right.
Speaking of which, have you ever listened to the Revolution podcast?
I haven't.
It's a good one. It's about a lot of cool historical stuff, but the Revolution podcast, I listened to that one and it's got the coolest intro. I love listening to it when I'm running because I'm like, let's go.
Gets you going. Yeah.
Let's go. So either way, I wanted to go and just give a quick rundown. There's no better place than the History Channel to just get some of the basics. So we're going to read what the History Channel said about what really happened when writing this paper. They said, under these articles, the Articles of Confederation, the states remained sovereign and independent, with Congress serving as the last resort on appeal of disputes. Significantly, the Articles of Confederation named the new nation, quote, the United States of America. I love that. Congress was given the authority to make treaties and alliances, maintain armed forces, and coin money. However, the central government lacked the ability to levy taxes and regulate commerce, issues that led to the Constitutional Convention in 1787 for the creation of new federal laws under the U.S. Constitution. Now, speaking of that, I love little tidbits of history. And it turns out there's these remarks from Hamilton complaining about all of the problems of the Articles of Confederation. And it said he was just being driven crazy seeing people crossing a state line to sell eggs and then having to pay money to that other state. Why were we treating each other as Americans with such disdain? Why were we saying you can't sell your products in our state without having to pay fees and fines and all this stuff? So that irked him. And then as well, it's just the fact that you can't actually do anything basically with that. And we're going to get into the details there, but it's just funny if you guys Google and look up what he was writing in his letters to his friends at the time, what he was writing to the other founders. He was very, very frustrated with the failures of these documents.
Well, Hamilton was all about efficiency. You know the play. They said he was nonstop, right? So it doesn't really bode well for him to have to stop at a state line and pay a tax to sell some eggs, right? I don't know if Hamilton was selling eggs, but
hated to see it. He hated to see it. So it turns out there were 6 drafts of the Articles of Confederation that were written before it was ratified and before the final version was settled on, actually, in 1777. It turns out Ben Franklin wrote the first version. Did you know that?
I did, actually.
So there were a few attempts before that at other tries for a first form of government, but Ben Franklin's first draft was written and presented to Congress in July 1775. And another fun tidbit, Connor, this will be my last one, I promise. I'm like, did you know this about
I love
eggs and
tidbits.
Alexander Hamilton? So Ben Franklin was weirdly just inspired and obsessed with the stories of the Native American tribes that formed together in confederacies, or they formed leagues, and he loved that concept. And so he studied them, he traveled to evaluate them and to learn from them, and then he wanted to try and emulate that. And so that's what he saw the future being, and he learned a lot from them. So love that kind of story. But the History Channel goes on to say, quote, none of these drafts contributed significantly to the fourth version written by John Dickinson of Pennsylvania, the text that after much revision provided the basis for the articles approved by Congress. Dickinson prepared his draft in June 1776, right before declaring independence, and it was revised by a committee of Congress and discussed in late July and August. The result, the third version of Dickinson's original, was printed to enable Congress to consider it further. In November 1777, the final articles, much altered by this long deliberative process, were approved for submission to the states. It then goes on to say the weakness of the Articles of Confederation was that Congress was not strong enough to enforce laws or raise taxes, making it difficult for the new nation to do basic things like repay their debts from the Revolutionary War and really command any presence on the world stage, as they had pretty bad situations happening, like being prevented from going in the Mississippi River, which they were supposed to be allowed to be using by Spain. And other foreign powers had land that was supposed to be in American territory at that point, and they weren't giving it over. And America had no power really to say, you need to give us that. They had
who are you?
no power to actually command that. So there was no executive branch or judiciary branch either. No checks and balances. Two of the three branches of government we have today. And so they didn't have that system, and it just obviously led to chaos, but that's what we're going to get into. And that's kind of the summary of that. I know it was a little chaotic, but this whole time is chaotic, and that's kind of the point. They tried to make a government that was going to last during a period of wartime and massive chaos, and it led to some problems.
Right, exactly. And, at the end of the day, I'm really glad that they went through that trial and error period, because just like everything in life, if at first you fail or you don't succeed or whatever the hell they say, then try again, right? And I'm glad that they did that. That's the American spirit of perseverance and will.
Love that.
That's all I got.
Whatever they said back there, you sound like Joe Biden. We
You
hold these
stupid
truths.
son of a
you know the thing. Maybe that's why we have these problems these days. So Connor, like I read earlier with that first introduction of paper number 15, what Publius was saying is it's not like we have to debate that the Articles of Confederation were a failure. He said everybody knows that it's not working out. The Federalists know that, and the Anti-Federalists know that. So why the heck are the Anti-Federalists now pushing back on the solution to the issue? That's one of those first things. But what he goes on to say is, they in general appear to harmonize in this sentiment, at least, that there are material imperfections in our national system and that something is necessary to be done to rescue us from impending anarchy. Now, what he goes on to say is that this is becoming embarrassing, basically. It's really bad. He goes, I was laughing at this in the green room because I just thought it was hilarious. We may indeed, with propriety, be said to have reached almost the last stage of national humiliation. There is scarcely anything that can wound the pride or degrade the character of an independent nation which we do not already experience. He didn't say that. I'm dramatizing. Sorry, I can't talk.
Dramatizing.
I'm dramatizing this right now, but he did say which we do not experience. I'll stop being insane. Are there engagements to the performance of which we are held by every tie respectable among men? These are the subjects of constant and unblushing violation. Do we owe debts to foreigners and to our own citizens contracted in a time of imminent peril for the preservation of our political existence? These remain without any proper or satisfactory provision for their discharge. Have we valuable territories and important posts in the possession of a foreign power which, by express stipulations, ought long since to have been surrendered? These are still retained to the prejudice of our interests, not less than our rights. Are we in a condition to resent or to repel the aggression? We have neither troops nor treasury nor government. Are we even in a condition to remonstrate with dignity? And he just goes on, question after question. We have this problem. Are we able to fix it? We have this problem. Are we able to fix it? We have this problem. Are we able to fix it? And by that, he's talking about dealing with foreign aggression, dealing with paying for things because we have a lot of debt from just fighting a Revolutionary War. And then, do we have the ability to even come up with more funds if we get attacked again and if we need to do something on behalf of the country?
Right. I want to go back to a line here that I thought was really interesting. So he says, let's see, now I'm having the trouble reading. It must be in truth acknowledged that, however these may differ in other respects, they in general appear to harmonize in this sentiment. You said this. At least that there are material imperfections in our national system and that something is necessary to be done to rescue us from impending anarchy. So oftentimes we see people make the argument that our founders were these like anarchist libertarian type people who just really didn't want any sort of like structure or order or control or anything like that. But that couldn't be farther from the truth, right? And this is just a personal pet project of mine. So excuse me, I'm going to plug it here.
Okay.
But I hate the idea that our founders were libertarians. They weren't. They were classical Republicans who believed in order and structure and good governance and smart governance and a small but efficient government, right? And that's what they ended up creating here. That's just a rumor that we have to start dispelling because so oftentimes it's used as a cudgel by our friends on the right. And I love libertarians on so many issues because, look, liberty is the most important thing, frankly, in America probably. You can make that argument, right? But these folks weren't anarchists. They didn't believe that the blood of or the tree of liberty must be watered with the blood of tyrants. That was a letter that Jefferson wrote to Madison once, and then Madison was like, "Whoa, dude, calm down." And he was like, "Yeah, you're probably right." So I just really want to make that one important distinction here, and then one other reaction to what you said, because I think this is so prescient. I was reading it over at my desk just a second ago before we went on. Hamilton wrote, "Are we in a condition to resent or to repel the aggression? We have neither troops nor treasury nor government. Are we even in a condition to remonstrate with dignity?" That sounds a lot like where we're at right now, right? And they at least had the wisdom and the knowledge to say, yeah, no, we're not. And everyone agreed on that point there. I wish we could get back there right now because whenever this is aired, I don't know, we may be in war with Russia, right? And I keep asking myself every morning when I wake up, when the drums of war are beating at the White House, are we a nation that is prepared to go to war? No, of course we're not. We've got transgenders running our military. We got fat generals. We have so much debt that we don't even know what to do with it. And we have a weak leader who has literally no will to actually get the job done. So I wish that there was the level of introspection that we had back here in the 1700s today in 2022, because that would do us a lot of good right now.
You want to know what made me think? When I was doing the research for this, one of the people I was listening to was talking about how, Great Britain, it really failed in so many ways.
Yeah.
It could have won quite easily.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It wasn't a situation where they were militarily defeated and they could just not possibly take over the colonies once more. Instead, they just decided it's better to have peace. It's better for us to pull out of this and just economically dominate them. That was their plan,
exactly.
was to stop fighting the Americans and instead just economically
They were
dominate.
trying to play the long game.
Yeah.
And then we said, okay, you want to play the long game? We'll beat you the long game too.
Yeah.
Because, they came back in 1812. We said, screw you. No.
So what happened at Yorktown, things could have just gone so differently instead of us winning the Revolutionary War. And Britain made a choice to stop fighting us. Now, what the guy said that I was listening to, he said it was not the greatest generation of England.
No, it wasn't.
Against one of the greatest generations of Americans. And I was like, wow. That statement alone, our greatest generation is the generation that fought the world wars, right? And then I also think our other greatest generation was the Revolutionary War period.
Of course.
Our greatest generation, went against one of England's worst generations in terms of military leadership and the structure of the country, what they were facing. And it reminds me of what's going on right now. I think we have one of our worst generations of Americans, whether that's in political leadership, military leadership, and the
Public
populace.
apathy. Yeah, exactly.
We are completely ignorant to the situation that we're facing and how bad it really is.
Right.
And the other point that he made was back then, we were fighting on our home turf, and we had that advantage of not only wanting to protect our home, wanting to protect our families. The women and children that were there, nobody knew what was going to happen if they lost. So there's just so much more added to the fight. But on top of that, there was this principle that spread from the top down, from George Washington to the members of the infantry.
Right.
that they were fighting for this concept of independence and freedom.
Yes.
And that allowed them to just have this passion that they would have stayed on the battlefield for a lot longer than anybody else out there.
They literally ate their shoes whenever they didn't have food to eat. Leather. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Think of us now.
And the other thing that kept them going, and this is the last thing I'll say on it, the other thing that kept them going is that they had an agreement among all of them that what they were doing was ordained by God and that it was blessed by God. The felicity of our Creator is what Washington would say, right? And we have completely lost sight of that today in the name of political correctness now, right? Because we can't talk about that. We can't even agree that, natural order is correct, that a man cannot, in fact, become pregnant. A man cannot, in fact, menstruate. I don't know if you know that. But we've rejected God. We've turned our backs on the Christian values that got us through the revolution. Because if you really dig into it, and there's some books over there on the floor that we could pick up at some point. We got a lot of books here too, but I'm looking at one
Books
right
everywhere.
here. It's about miracles. It's about the miracles that won us the revolution. A lot of them had to do with the weather, right? Because if there wasn't fog at certain battles, I don't remember which one it was, but whatever.
Crossing the Delaware.
Yeah, if there wasn't fog when we were crossing the Delaware, we wouldn't have made it across. We would have been spotted. We would have been killed. Washington could have died. We wouldn't have our president, right? God was truly watching over this entire time. And if we don't get back to that and say, hey, this is a nation that's blessed and highly favored, then we're going to be a nation gone under. So.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of that, Hamilton says right here, "Hear, my countrymen, impelled by every motive that ought to influence an enlightened people, let us make a firm stand for our safety, our tranquility, our dignity, our reputation. Let us at last break the fatal charm which has too long seduced us from the paths of felicity and prosperity." That's really good. I mean, that's kind of what you just said.
Right.
What interests me, speaking of all of this distortion of American history, I'm sure you've seen the 1619 Project. It's important for you guys to understand what's in the 1619 Project curriculum and what they're actually teaching instead of just hearing people on Newsmax and Fox. Like, I go on Newsmax all the time and talk about how it's bad, but I hope everybody out there understands you need to personally understand why it's bad. You need to read the curriculum, investigate that for yourself. Don't just listen to the talking heads that are on TV and behind the microphones. So go read the curriculum. But one of those distortions is to belittle the founders and belittle the purpose of the founding. One of the things they're doing is talking about how, well, it was actually the Americans that were ungrateful. It was these radicals, the founders, that were ungrateful because England won our war against France.
Right.
And then we had to just pay for that. And the moment we were taxed to have to pay for the war that was on American soil, that's when we decided to rebel. And it was these radicals that didn't want to have to pay for the war that was fought on their behalf. And so we should have been thankful. Isn't that strange?
It's fascinating to see people like Nicole Hannah-Jones, who's a very deeply unimpressive woman. I don't want to assume it's gender. When you look at it, it doesn't quite look like a woman, but I'm going to go with her. Excuse me. Anyway, it's fascinating to see her side with the British Crown at the time, because I wonder if she knows that in the original draft of the Declaration of Independence, and no one talks about this enough, Thomas Jefferson had really, really strong words for King George about the evils of slavery. He said, "You're the one who brought these people over here. You're the one who shipped them over. We tried to stop it. You said no, and you crushed us," right? Thomas Jefferson was a very complicated man. He owned slaves. We know that. But he knew what was right and he knew what was wrong. And King George was a ruthless slave trader, and everyone in Britain was at the time as well, right? So they really should be siding with the founders if they knew anything about history, but they don't, or they choose not to, because they probably do, and they're just going to ignore it because that doesn't unite us or it doesn't divide us, which is their goal, right?
Yeah. Well, I personally think we're going through a cultural revolution in America. Like, so if you look at communist China with what happened under Mao's cultural revolution, they got rid of old customs, old habits, all of the classic ways that brought society together, tradition and heritage.
Right.
And I think we're seeing that in America today, whether, what started with just getting rid of Columbus Day, then turned into, well, you also can't say Merry Christmas, and you can't say the pledge or have prayer in schools.
Right.
And you also can't have schools named after founders because they own slaves, and we'll get rid of their statues too. And while we're at it, Abraham Lincoln, a little troublesome. Yes, he freed the slaves, but I think he also said something kind of controversial on another topic. So let's get rid of his statue as well. And it's just going down and down. And you're from Texas.
I am from
Texas.
Texas.
My home is in Boerne, Texas.
Yes,
Love
Boerne
Texas.
is so beautiful.
I love it. We should go sometime.
Let's
it's really
go.
Great. We'll go on a little trip because it's
Freedom
very
Papers on the
historical.
road. Yeah, it is.
Absolutely. And speaking of distorting history, it's not just with our founding, but with Texas. Did you see
they
the
wanna get rid of
Texas
the
left
Alamo.
was trying to distort how to teach the Alamo in schools?
literally the entire
It's
thing
insane.
with Texas is remember the Alamo, and they're like, no, forget it. Actually,
if you go to Texas, it's just this mentality that Texas history and heritage, and the Alamo specifically, is such a fabric of the society there. It brings everybody together.
Yeah.
And to have learned
It
when
really
I was
does.
there and when I got my home there, I was shocked to find out that they are trying, the educators, to make it so that you can no longer teach the Alamo.
Right.
The people there were heroic because instead
So
they were white racist settlers on Mexican land. Now, to remove that from the state's history, it takes away, it strikes at the knees
Mhm.
of building this respect for history in Texas.
The entire ethos of being a Texan is built around the mythology of the Alamo and Goliad. I was in Goliad over the Christmas break, where these men came together and said that, we're actually not going to put up with this crap. We're gonna declare independence, and we are going to say you're a tyrant, and we deserve to govern ourselves. It was like it was a mini revolution that modeled the American Revolution happening in the great Republic of Texas, or what was soon to become the Republic of Texas. And they were so brave, and they were so outnumbered, but they had the political will to fight, and they also believed that they were ordained by God to do something bigger than themselves. The entire ethos. If you've ever seen a Texan and you've wondered why they have this swagger about them, which they do, which I do, which we do. I guess you do too, a little bit. You got a little bit of it when you were there. I can tell. It's because of what happened at the Alamo. It's because we had 300 men who defended a fort in the name of independence against what was at the time, quite frankly, the strongest army. Mexico had just gotten done beating the French, right? People don't know that. Mexico was a really good army, but they were run by really evil people. Santa Anna was the general there, a total brutal dictator way before his time. And but what it all goes back to is anything that supports the idea that a white man or a Christian or anything that's, not some weird alphabet mafia soup person, right? They're actually evil. And the values that they hold of bravery and courage and strength and wisdom and providence, those are not the values that are conducive to a Marxist society. So we must erase them. One other thing. You brought up the Lincoln and the renaming of the schools and renaming things from the Alamo, et cetera. You know what they replace them with all the time? It's never anything good, right? It's never anything super exciting, because if they really wanted to, they could be like, all right, we're going to replace Abraham Lincoln High School with I don't know, Harriet Tubman High School or something like that, right? No, they don't do that. They choose to replace it with Central 209, just some random thing, or Main Street High School or Oak Tree High School, because they want to remove any sort of identity. Because when you have no identity, you have no, it breaks what Hamilton called that knot that binds us all together. What Burke talked about. I've talked about it on the show a million times.
Yeah.
So it's a dark, desolate world that they want to create, full of
collectivism.
Nothingness.
Honestly, it's building that idea of the collective instead of the individual.
Right.
It's anti-individualism. I also saw an interaction on the internet. I know you can't really believe what you see on the internet, but I saw this interaction of somebody posting this really cool viral picture of Harriet Tubman on a US dollar, and I was like, oh, that is the coolest thing. I mean, I'm fine with that. If we want to add more historical people to our dollars, go ahead. That sounds kind of cool. And it was the coolest picture. She has this pistol in her hand, or a revolver or something.
She's a baddie.
It was cool, and I love history. She was awesome. And some people replied to it on the left, and they were like, does it have to have a gun in it though? Can it be a more peaceful image? This seems a little too gun-toady.
She killed slaveholders. Shouldn't you like that?
And she has these amazing quotes about the importance of being able to hold that firearm in that situation.
Anyway.
Whatever. But we're getting off on a tangent. The point is that when I was
that.
looking into the founding and the Articles of Confederation specifically, first of all, there's little out there about it, and that concerns me. The fact that most people don't understand that there were multiple attempts to create this great government.
Right.
We didn't just come up with it and say, hey, let's try this out. It's not some failed concept that these old white men made back then.
Yeah.
Instead, they very meticulously put this together after learning some harsh lessons,
Yeah.
both in America, on American soil, and through the past. And it concerns me that that's not included. The other is it's just frustrating to know that there's so many narratives out there for students to learn that these were just these chaotic, rebellious, libertarian-style guys that hated government and were ungrateful for England and what they did for them. So I was really concerned with everything I found, and I just wanted to add that into the episode because it's really concerning. Now, let's get back to the paper itself. Number 15 goes on to talk about how it's a little frustrating that the Anti-Federalists agree with the Federalists about the Articles of Confederation not working, and we understand it's for certain reasons, including the fact that it can't do anything, and it doesn't encourage cooperation, and it's not strong enough to have any actual effect on the nation as a whole, but they still don't want to bring the solution that would fix the problem.
Yeah.
And so he says, while they admit that the government of the United States is destitute of energy, they contend against conferring upon it those powers which are requisite to supply that energy. And so he says the evils that we experience do not proceed from minute or partial imperfections, but from the fundamental errors in the structure of the building, which cannot be amended otherwise than by an alteration in the first principles and main pillars of the fabric. And so these problems that have been caused by Articles of Confederation are not going to be fixed with a couple little amendments. Instead, we need to start from the beginning. We need to scrap it and start building something new. How come you can't get on board with us?
Right.
And what I've learned from this, most specifically reading the interactions between the founders, Connor, is that the Federalists were so frustrated with the Anti-Federalists because they weren't proposing any solutions.
Right.
Want to know what it reminded me of? Repeal and replace.
Yeah,
Obamacare.
totally. Right.
It's like, okay, yes, Obamacare is bad.
Yes.
You want to get rid of it. And then we won Congress, conservatives won Congress with this great repeal replace mentality and did nothing. Had no plan, and it reminded me of the Anti-Federalists back then.
Right,
Totally missed an opportunity there.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't do nothing. We cut Jeff Bezos' taxes. So that's a big win for us. That's a big win for us.
That's a good ad. Yeah. Good ad.
Idiots. It's actually really frustrating, and they should feel privileged to, the Federalists didn't really have to include these people. They could have excluded it. They could have been like, no, screw you. You don't get to play in our sandbox because we're trying to build something bigger than this. And if you don't want to be a part of it, then get the hell out of here, right? But they didn't do that because they were their fellow countrymen, and they gave a damn about the fact that, like, no, look, you're my brother. We fought together, and we may disagree on something, but we need to be able to come together for something bigger than ourselves. I say it all the time. That's one of, like, the most important things, the lessons that we need to learn from our founders, is that they gave. I keep saying this. Can I say damn? I'm going to say damn. They gave a damn about things that were bigger than them, more permanent, more transcendental. So that's really inspiring, and I think we need to get back there because right now we're seeing people who, like, they know we're living through this right now. By the way, like, in case you didn't know,
tell us more.
Right? we see these people up in Washington D.C., the people on the left mainly, and some people on the right who are just managers of controlled decline, rather than being people who actively fight against it. They know that something's wrong here, but what are they doing about it? They're just like they're super just content to sit back and watch America be defiled by people who didn't build it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, who are you? Just some immigrant or immigrant, whatever. Don't get me started on immigration, right? But, like, you just came here and you're new here and now you want to destroy America?
Yeah,
no.
Ilhan Omar.
I know. We keep going back to Ilhan Omar, but, like, I don't want to feel like I'm picking on her.
She's just a great
but she deserves
poster child. She's a poster child of we gave her refuge. We gave her every opportunity possible. She became a congresswoman in the United States of America after being a refugee, and now she wants to destroy every aspect of the country that gave her the opportunities that she has now. And the only reason we're able to give her those opportunities is because of the principles that she's trying to get rid of.
Yeah.
So it's very frustrating. So I hate that we're told that we're anti-immigrant. It's insane to me.
No, of course it is.
Also, this might be a little spicy, but I saw something that was like, stop calling our founders and stop calling the original people that came to America immigrants and saying those were the original immigrants. We were settlers.
Yeah, we
brought
were.
Western values to this country.
I'm going to be even spicier. We weren't just settlers. We were conquerors. We came to this land and we conquered this land, right?
You're right.
I think I can say
spicy.
it because it's true.
You're
I'm
right.
sorry.
We won the land.
The Native Americans, and we can call them that. They're Native Americans. At the end of the day, they lived here and we came here and we conquered it. That's how the world worked at the time. I'm sorry. If you go back to the Bible and they talk about Noah, they say that Noah was a good man. Everyone knows that. But what people don't talk about enough is that the full verse there, and I wish that I remember it off the top of my head, but I don't. Charlie's good at that. I'm not so good at that. I'm not as smart as he is. But the full verse says, Noah was a good man among the people of his time, right? So at the time that our founders and that these settlers and the pilgrims came over, the norm was to conquer. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to apologize for that.
Well, that's in the Federalist Papers as well. As they address the world is changing. In Europe, what used to be something where you could quickly conquer, and so there was constantly these shifting borders and everything. Things are settling down in those lands because they're finally building the fortifications that prevent that. But here in America, it's the Wild West, baby.
It is.
And by that I mean the whole nation was basically the Wild West at the time, and so it was going to be constant invasions between people until infrastructure was built, and so that was one of the warnings. And that's just how human nature is,
That's
mankind
just how it is.
Now, let's get
I
back
will
to
say
this.
they blew
We'll
a
keep
home
going
field
on spicy
advantage, though.
things.
But anyway.
Oh my gosh. It's funny. I love history.
Amen.
It can be quite gruesome, though.
It can.
Now, that being said, also, we need a button where we press it and it goes, I ain't no Charlie Kirk. So
That's a great idea.
Every time we can't, like,
he
quote
would
the
love
Bible
that.
or something,
He would
we
love that. Maybe it would call him in here and he can get it for us.
he, like, pops on the screen every time we send something.
What?
Okay. Off the
Sorry,
rails today.
we're back.
Now, Connor, let's get into one of the bigger problems here of when you don't have a strong, small but strong, centralized government bringing all of the groups together, you more so just have like a league of different teammates that are not interested in helping each other. And so how do you work as a team? How do you hold the teammates accountable when they don't want to participate in the behavior and the actions of the team itself? So Publius says, except as to the rule of apportionment, the United States have an indefinite discretion to make requisitions for men and money, but they have no authority to raise either by regulations extending to the individual citizens of America. The consequence of this is that though in theory their resolutions concerning those objects are laws constitutionally binding on the members of the Union, yet in practice they are mere recommendations. They're just recommendations, which the states observe or disregard at their option. So he says we must resolve to incorporate into our plan those ingredients which may be considered as forming the characteristic difference between a league and a government. We must extend the authority of the Union to the persons of the citizens, the only proper objects of government. Now what he's saying there, I looked into it, the text of the Articles of Confederation, it's not exactly like a government for the people.
No, not
It's
at all.
not a system of rules and laws for people to live under. Instead, it's a government for the states.
For the states, yes.
And so, again, it's like creating a league of states with no regard for the humans that live in them.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting.
You know what's actually really interesting, though, is that whenever they realized that we got to get together, we got to write a constitution, not an Articles of Confederation. An Articles of Confederation.
It's really annoying to say.
It's tough. An
And
AOC.
you can't say AOC.
We can't say, okay, excuse me. I hope she's doing better, by the way. I heard she got COVID. I don't know. Anyway, the original first draft to the preamble of the Constitution, everyone knows how it starts. We the people, right? The original first draft, because I guess it was probably muscle memory, it was written by Governor Morris of New York. That was his name, Governor. It wasn't We the People. It was written originally as We the States. And that was rejected by the Continental Congress because they said, whoa, we've been there, done that, right? We need to be people-focused here because we saw what happened last time. So if we don't open up this new government to the people and emphasize the fact that, like, we're not just a collection of states, we're not just a collection of, like, warring entities, and we're not a confederacy. We're a body of people with a shared heritage, a shared culture, and shared values. And so that's how we got the beautiful preamble that we have today. It's human-centric, not state-centric, which goes to, like, the most important thing about our freedom.
Yeah.
It comes down to us, right? It's about us. The government was formed with us in mind, and not the bureaucrats in D.C., and not the bureaucrats in Phoenix or Austin or, whatever, Albany. So I just think that's really cool. People don't know that. We the people.
Yeah. Well, actually, it kind of reminds me, the little details matter. And when I
really
was
do.
reading about the Treaty of Paris, when we were negotiating, so we win the Revolutionary War, and then we send our
I think it
representatives.
was the first Treaty of Paris, right? Because then we had one in Vietnam, then we had one in World War II. They really like to go to Paris to sign things. I guess
I'm
they have
starting
good
to think
pens.
it's just the elites that enjoy going to Paris.
Probably.
They just
Jefferson
want a
and Franklin
little
among
vacation.
them, right?
So when we sent them to negotiate the Treaty of Paris, England wouldn't see us or respect us as an individual nation yet.
Right.
And so it was supposed to be in the negotiations that we would negotiate, okay, now we are free people.
Right.
And our representatives said, no, that's not a part of the negotiations. We are already our own nation. We are already our own free people. We are negotiating as two separate countries now.
Right.
And so that was a really good tidbit. And then on top of that, I guess they like came to some agreement of what their address would be to the nation that we are, instead of, okay, you are our colonies and you are now negotiating to no longer be our colonies after you already won the war.
Right.
So I love that. We're standing up for ourselves from the beginning.
Right. That's as we
putting
should
our
have.
foot down.
I wish we did that more today.
Imagine. Oh my gosh. I keep seeing what's going on in Ukraine and I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. Either way, now, because, like the founders are saying in this, because we were a government of states, basically the League of States, that all had their own separate rules, nobody was coordinating together, and nobody was really required to do anything. The only way to hold the state accountable, if you really wanted to,
it's like attack them, right?
Yeah, and so that's kind of the point. Is the founder, or the Publius is saying there's really two ways you can hold people accountable. One could be a system of justice and laws, and another can be a system of military action. Now, they address the fact that you can really only hold people accountable with that system of laws and regulation and all of those forms of punishment.
Right.
But really, the only way to hold the state accountable, especially when we don't have any way to really tax them or put our power over them, is to just attack them. Do we really want to have to threaten to attack each other or actually attack each other and invade each other every time that a state doesn't want to play their part?
Well, it's almost
what are
like,
we doing to ourselves?
Yeah, it's like weakness begets tyranny, right? And so if you really want to avoid a tyrannical government, then give us the structures to actually create a government of the people and by the people and for the people, right? Because if you don't, then we're just going to have to act like we're warring states all the time and just invade the crap out of you and kill you, right? That's called tyranny. So I'm glad we came around on that, because it's no way to live.
Absolutely not. Now, after they address that part, the next thing they move into is, what do you know? A constant theme throughout the Federalist Papers, mankind and our consistent nature throughout history. And what do you know? We aren't exactly the nicest people to each other sometimes, right? So this is more about the naivete of maybe the anti-federalists and anybody that's a little against building a stronger government. They say, there was a time when we were told that breaches by the states of the regulations of the federal authority were not to be expected. Don't worry about that. You know what I mean?
Right.
That a sense of common interest would preside over the conduct of the respective members. So we would just have a common interest and never want to argue with each other. It's like siblings. Obviously you don't want to fight with people in your own house. Yeah. But how often do siblings fight and steal each other's clothes and stuff?
Yeah,
all
when
the
mom's
time.
not looking, right?
Right? And then it's just constant negativity. I don't know. I have a sister, okay? So
I don't. I was the only child, so I don't relate. Oh, yeah, absolutely. That might explain a lot. I don't know.
Okay. So then he goes on. It at all times betrayed an ignorance of the true springs by which human conduct is actuated. Why has government been instituted at all? That's the thing. Why do we even have to be here? Why are we trying to build this government in the first place? Because the passions of men will not conform to the dictates of reason and justice without constraint. Has it been found that bodies of men act with more rectitude or greater disinterest? Greater disinterestedness than individuals. Sorry, my highlighting was bad. The contrary of this has been inferred by all accurate observers of the conduct of mankind. Now, do you have any thoughts on this? I have a few, but I'll let you.
I'm actually really interested to hear what you have to say about it.
So this reminded me, they're talking basically about, and they go into a little bit more of some guys will avoid negative behavior if it's just themselves.
Right.
Because that will put onto their shoulders a bad reputation. They're going to be known as somebody who's disloyal. They're going to be known as someone who breaks their word. They're going to be known as someone who does naughty things. But when you're put in a collective, when you're put in a group of people, they misbehave.
Of course.
And they're a lot less likely to want to restrict themselves to a concern of reputation. And when you're in a group of people, you're a lot more likely to maybe do some bad things.
Of course.
What does that remind you of? Reminds me of Black Lives Matter and Antifa.
It reminds me of just like mob justice and something that we're probably not allowed to talk about on here because it'll get us banned. So cut it out if you have to. Or do that little bleeping thing. Do that bleeping thing that you do. I thought I was cursing in one of the last podcasts that we did, but I just realized that I was saying the shot word. Anyway, but yeah, those are tech tyrants. It reminds me of this thing that Dr. Robert Malone talked about on Joe Rogan, mass formation psychosis, right? Where we wouldn't really be in this weird situation where we're in, where we're all just kind of okay with the weird triple mask thing and like the bodily autonomy thing and all of that, if we weren't being like basically hypnotized by the masses and the mobs and like comply or die or else, you know. So yeah, that's kind of what you're talking about here, and scary stuff. We have to avoid that at all costs, right?
Yeah. Well, I just reminded me the way that they were saying, you know, an individual going into a store. I picture this: an individual going into a store, looting the store, their face available for everybody to see.
Right.
The camera can see it. I mean, now today in America, apparently you could do that if you steal less than $1,000.
Well,
that's a whole other thing.
If you have a high enough, you know, equity score or whatever. Right?
Oh my
If you're a
gosh,
white
it's
guy, you
insane
can't do
to see
that.
those robbery videos.
I know,
But usually in a society, if you are somebody that is stealing
We used to be
property
a
and you go in
society.
and break a law, that is on your shoulders. You're going to jail. You're going to have that reputation, and that's going to follow you for life. But what I see and what we saw in June 2020 and on were these people
Floydapalooza.
put on masks. The black bloc is what they call it. When they all dress the same, they all put masks over their face. And I'm not talking the COVID masks. I'm talking those
like a
like
baklava.
ski masks, weird hippie things that they all probably wear on their snowboarding because they're like secretly rich and they live in their parents' basement.
Just quick
Snowboarding's
correction.
expensive.
Balaclava, not a baklava. A baklava is a Greek dessert.
Delicious.
Thank you. Sorry.
That's going to be a reel. We're going to make that one a reel. So they put these things on. It's like their little uniform, and they do it so that they all look the same. You can't track them. And now the new legislation came out either in Oregon or Seattle, somewhere, maybe Washington or Portland, where you can now no longer post people's prison pictures onto the internet, onto Twitter, because what happens is these white Antifa people at Black Lives Matter.
They get exposed. They're all really ugly, by the way. Have you noticed that?
They get posted and then they get made fun of because it's embarrassing.
As they should.
Well, the politicians are protecting them now.
Well, that's disgusting.
Either way, it reminded me of this mentality that the founders are talking about, of it's really dangerous when you have this concept of mob rule and no way to hold people accountable.
Yeah, I mean, accountability and structure and order are the things that create a proper and just society. We're losing track of that right now, aren't we? I mean, we're seeing situations where people are allowed to just crap on the sidewalk if they want to, right? That's not order. That's not structure. That's not accountability. Like, we need to be willing to say, no, you can't do that. Pull up your pants and get off my sidewalk. Like, I'm trying to walk here, dude.
Did I tell you what happened with Alex and I? So
Oh, yeah, you had like a hobo break into your apartment, right? What the hell is going on, people?
So
Where are our
much is
leaders?
happening. I mean, let's talk about how this is similar to a League of States, right?
Yeah.
So Alex used to work at Turning Point, and she's the sweetest. She's my roommate.
She's great.
And she's our co-friend.
She's your wife, isn't she?
Well, we often joke about being each other's wives because we're future homemakers. We are homemakers in training,
Yes.
and then we forget that people don't realize we are straight single females that live together.
You're not sexual anarchists.
Yeah, and so they're like, oh, I didn't know Morgan was married, and they take us very seriously. So we have to stop making that wife joke now,
Excuse me.
apparently. But either way, we have a situation of a homeless encampment. Connor, there's a wall, and we're in a gated apartment community,
yeah,
a
I've done
gated
that.
apartment complex.
Before you lived there.
Oh, I'm like, you guys hung out
You
without
actually,
me. Great.
a lot of Turning Point people live there. So, like, the hobos are coming for you. You better watch
Apparently, I
out.
wasn't invited to this.
Well, you're new
Just
here.
kidding.
You were in Texas. You were better off.
Yeah. So we have our apartment complex gated and huge wall, at least 10 feet high wall. On the other side of that wall is a new homeless encampment. Now, what happened is when we drive in, the homeless people will come up to the gate and then walk behind a car once the car opens the gate, and then they are in the apartment complex.
You need to start putting
They
your car in
also have
reverse.
started to rush up to the door. So Alex was on a run, walked up to the gate and went to open the person gate and not the car gate. And the person pops out of the bushes and asks her to hold the gate and is like, what is she supposed to do? She's a young 5-foot-something 20-year-old,
Yeah.
23-year-old.
Like,
and
hold
this
open the gate or get
tall man
attacked.
is looking at her directly saying, keep that door open. So what are we supposed to do in that situation?
Shoot them.
Then it goes to the next step. Now they're crawling over the wall. And they're building steps on the wall. What are we told to do? By the apartment complex? I feel like we're being abandoned by our politicians. The apartment complex says, well, you need to call the police. The police say you need to talk to the apartment complex. They need better security. The apartment complex then says, well, it's the laws that are set that allow us to support the transients of this community. The transients, Connor. The transients.
This makes me, there's literally nothing, and this is a new thing too, because homelessness, our acceptance of homelessness is a public display of apathy towards our fellow man.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's really wrong. And it creates a society that's not enjoyable to live in. And it's also obviously not safe to live in, right?
Well, that's the thing. And I don't want you guys to think that I'm just mad that there's homeless people walking around. That's
I am.
fine. But what's happening...
It's not fine.
Well, I just
Whatever,
mean like,
yeah.
I'm not like, oh, I have to see them. That's fine. I feel bad that they're there and I want to help them. But what they're doing is they get in the apartment complex and then they're breaking into people's apartments. And so that happened to Alex.
Yeah, like that's a problem.
And so we are young. I'm 25. She's 23. And we had homeless people walk into our apartment one day. And then a second time that day, we caught them jiggling our key trying to get in and break the lock. So obviously that's very concerning. And when we have no way of help, it's very frustrating and it feels like we're being abandoned. So how do you hold these people accountable? And I think we've gone so far as a country to now, well, we have to respect the transient's ability to keep their home right next to yours.
It's
so
a super dangerous idea of tolerance is what it is. And like, we should not tolerate that. Like I just said, like, where are our leaders literally like saying no? Like, we're not going to allow you to do this. Like I said earlier, you're a drug addict. You're a hobo who lives on the streets. You're probably going through a lot of mental problems, but you didn't build this. You don't get to destroy it. That's not your right. Like, and at the end of the day, what we need to do is we need strength, and strength, just like we talked about earlier with here in Federalist 15, strength begets order. And order begets compassion. The least compassionate thing that we could do for these people, and the least compassionate thing that we could do for our fellow citizens, obviously, because you're getting broken into, which is super scary. You shoot them next time. I cut that out probably, I guess. But like, this baffles me so much that we're just so apathetic to this, and we're just like, oh, it's just how it is. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Like, stand up for something. Where the hell are our leaders?
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
Sorry,
and
I'm
so
fired up
it actually, I'm sorry that we kind of went on a little rampage about homelessness. It's more so about danger and safety and protecting citizens and taxpayers. Like, it's tax season, baby. I'm about to pay my taxes. And at the same time, have to have the police tell me, well,
I'm like, what am I paying taxes
the laws
for?
protect the transients, so we can't exactly do anything unless they like attacked you. It's like,
why don't the laws protect you?
Okay,
though?
they came in our front door.
They're not paying taxes.
So it kind of goes into what is said at the end of 15, and I'm
Right.
sorry that we totally went on a rampage, you guys.
There's going to be like a part 2 of this code because 16 is a continuation, so we can pick it back up.
Yes, so we're entering this section of the AOC. I'm just going to say the AOC this time. But what Publius finishes on is saying, if people aren't held accountable, and it's not fair, and people are held to different standards, and you can choose what rules you want to follow and what not, and other people are following the rules all the time, then how the heck are we going to keep a society going? And why should we encourage anybody to want to stay a part of our society?
Right.
It's going to fall apart. And that's why I thought of the homeless situation with us being abandoned as tax-paying citizens. He says, why should we do more in proportion than those who are embarked with us in the same political voyage? Why should we consent to bear more than our proper share of the common burden? There were suggestions which human selfishness could not withstand, and which even speculative men who looked forward to remote consequences could not without hesitation combat. Each state yielding to the persuasive voice of immediate interest or convenience has successively withdrawn its support, till the frail and tottering edifice seems ready to fall upon our heads and to crush us beneath its ruins. Publius. And what he's saying there is basically foreshadowing what will happen if we continue to allow this lawlessness, if we continue to allow some people to follow the rules, others to not, and we completely abandon a concept of law and justice and order for all people. Now, Connor, do you have any closing thoughts? 'Cause
Closing
we gotta wrap
thoughts.
it up.
We got to go. We got to run, folks. There's a country to save. What he's talking about there is something that we call anarcho-tyranny, where it's like the law-abiding citizens of this country, they get punished for, paying taxes and living in their homes and keeping an apartment. And those who just openly defy our laws and our societal, our social contract, they get protected. And he's saying, what's the point then?
Yep.
And
Things
he's
will fall
right.
apart.
And they are falling apart. And I hope we figure out a way to save it. We'll see what happens.
Absolutely. Connor, thanks for joining.
Thanks
we
for having
appreciate
me.
it. Thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate it. Come back for paper number 16.
Yep.
But I want to just give a shout out for everybody that's been listening. I really appreciate it. Follow us on Freedom Papers Podcast on Instagram because we post all the fun bloopers and the
They're a lot of
promos
fun.
and the highlights and clips and stuff. And we really want to build that community. Always watch us. The video version is on YouTube, on Turning Point USA's YouTube. But subscribe on Spotify and Apple and give us a 5-star review. We've got to start asking for that. We usually just put the content out, but we've got to be hard go-getters. Give us a 5-star review. Tell us which one was better in this episode. I don't care if you pick Connor. I just want you to leave a word review. Thank you so
Right.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
How much does the earth cost?
I'm gonna buy the entire earth.
Hey everyone, John Root here. Coming up next on TPUSA Live, tune into a brand new episode of POPlitics where Alex Clark explains the show that Rector, why conservatives need to chill, was Speaker Pelosi right about the Olympics, and so much more pop culture without the propaganda. Next on POPlitics.
When I grew up, daytime TV was about like seasonal cupcake recipes.
Yeah.
Why are we doing the Holocaust at 11 a.m.? It's 11 in the morning. Why are we doing the Holocaust? Calm down. Daytime TV is for people that get into the day. We don't need to be doing genocide early. Relax.
I heard you put the call in to get Whoopi out of there.
I did. Because I wanted her to take a time out and have a think, and I wanted her replaced with Roseanne. Bring back Roseanne,
right?
Who is Jewish.
Okay.
So we get Whoopi out.
Okay.
Take a chill pill, read the Torah, whatever you have to do. Go to a few bagel shops, and then bring Roseanne in, who's criminally insane, but Jewish and fun.
So we fixed the show.
The real way to fix the show is to destroy it. The View is it's one of the worst. First of all,
how many times do I have to tell you to start listening to Tim Dillon? No one listens to me, and then you get all sad and bent out of shape that no one is funny anymore. Don't say I didn't try to warn you. You're so right. I feel like a complete idiot after I found out something about that new Netflix show with Kristen Bell. The Spotify CEO says that they have no editorial responsibility as a platform. They believe in free speech. Conservatives are practically peeing their pants over this, and I'm over here like, whoa, wait a minute. You're ignoring one glaring problem. My reaction to Speaker Nancy Pelosi telling athletes not to bring up the human rights violations of the CCP at the Olympics, and I answer your questions that you send in to me for Pop Quiz. I'm Alex Clark, and this is POPlitics. You know that new show on Netflix with Kristen Bell? The woman in the street across from the skeleton man in the car, in the garage, diagonal from the ant with the machete and the mac and cheese, upside down from the mistress with the slumber party in the barn, and on top of the goat on the mountain in a vest?
Why would you do that?
I binged this entire show last weekend without knowing it was a parody. Why am I just now finding this out? Am I a moron?
But I will do everything in my power to get that information for you.
I watched that whole thing thinking it was a little bizarre, but I never saw it being advertised or promoted as a parody on crime thrillers. And now looking back, if I would have known that, I think I would have liked it even more, because then it would have made sense to laugh.
My emotions! My emotions!
Like the sex scene, are you kidding me? I mean, I thought it was bizarre, but now knowing it was supposed to be makes it so much funnier. The casseroles, hilarious. The title, so obnoxious and confusing. Maybe I should have known from the title it was a parody, but the thing is, if I could watch it and not even realize it was a parody of crime thrillers, does that mean it was a bad parody?
You'll stop telling people that I have a drinking problem? You know, I used to feel bad for you, but I do not feel bad for you anymore, and I will not pray for you anymore. Carol.
Shocker, I have an unpopular opinion. Conservatives, what even the heck are you talking about? Everyone is just worshiping Spotify because their CEO said they believe in free speech and they want to be a platform, not a publisher. But am I still the only one that sees something fishy going on and refuses to worship this company?
Wait. All of you!
Daddy, chill.
What the hell is even that?
What the Spotify CEO said is great, but if they truly believe that they have no editorial responsibility in supporting creator expression, why do you need to put a warning on certain episodes saying the views expressed go against what the experts are saying, even when the guest may be, say, an expert themselves?
This doesn't add up.
Sometimes I think if someone says a couple conservative buzzwords, we immediately start worshiping that brand or person without even considering their actions. To me, putting a disclaimer at the beginning of your podcast to insinuate a guest may not be credible because they have a different opinion than fact checkers at Facebook is not just being a publisher and is, in fact, being editorial. Sometimes I feel like I'm losing my mind.
I am crazy.
Just know you'll never fully agree with every single thing conservatives do or say, just like you won't fully agree with everything liberals do or say. And that's just politics, baby.
Demon rats. That's what I said, demon rats.
Check out this warning Speaker Nancy Pelosi gave to Olympians before going to Beijing.
I would say to our athletes, you're there to compete. Do not risk incurring the anger of the Chinese government because they are ruthless. I know there is a temptation on the part of some to speak out while they are there. I respect that, but I also worry about what the Chinese government might do to their reputations, to their families.
Here's the deal, Piglet. I think you're correct. It isn't safe to be in China talking crap about the CCP. They will disappear your ass, but that isn't the issue. We shouldn't even be there at all. The US should have made a statement by not participating in the Olympics because they're being held in China.
I hear they're very fierce. The heffalumps and woozles have got me.
Pop quiz time! You write in, I tell all. Let's go. I'm exposing myself. No, not like that. This is Pop Quiz. Kylie from Virginia asked, how many pairs of shoes do you have and can we get a haul? Is seeing more of my real life in episodes something you guys would like, or do you prefer that kind of content on Instagram stories? Jess from Michigan asked, it's date night. Would you rather stay in and watch movies with some takeout, or would you rather go out to the movies and go to a nice dinner? Probably stay home and watch movies, but I'm also PMSing, so maybe I would think differently about that any other time.
And me being on my period right now has nothing to do with it.
Emily from Arizona asked, what's your idea of a dream wedding? Lately, I'm not sure. I thought I knew, and now I don't know if I even want to do a whole wedding. Maybe I just want to elope and save the stress, because to be honest, just knowing my family, I just feel like if I do a full-blown wedding, I know I don't want it to be in Indiana where I'm from and where my family's from, and I just think if I do a wedding somewhere else, no one's gonna show up. That's just the honest truth.
Do you, Poppy, take Atticus to be your lawfully wedded husband? She does. And do you, Atticus, take Poppy to be your lawfully wedded wife? Wonderful.
Hannah from California asked, what justifies fleeing a liberal state to move to a conservative state? I want to fight for my home state of California, but dang, it's getting hard. What justifies it? Literally everything. No mandates, lower taxes, more people who share your values.
You can do whatever you want. It's whatever.
Josie from Alabama asked, if you could drop everything and go on a vacation, where would you go and why? Perry! I have Emily to thank for that. I just need them to drop the mandates and I am there.
Would you prefer a soft opening to get the kitchen up to speed, or do you want to start with a bang?
Bang! In my opinion.
If you have a question for me, submit it through the link in our bio.
There are known knowns. There are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. But there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't know.
Getting punched in the face by a pro-abortion activist, launching a blog, accidentally killing someone as a teenager, and finding your one true love who shares your values. These are just a few of the stories in the newest episode of The Spillover, Conservatives Spill All. Subscribe to the show to listen on Apple and Spotify, and leave a 5-star review to support your fellow sisters. Don't forget, like this episode, leave a comment saying, Daddy, chill, and then DM it to your favorite liberal and click save, because it tells the algorithm that you love us. We're back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Your weekly life hack from me is to clean out your nightstand. You will feel 10 pounds lighter, trust me. It's pop culture without the propaganda every single day. I'm Alex Clark, and this is POPlitics. Support POPlitics, the first ever conservative pop culture daily show, by subscribing to our channel, turning on notifications, and of course, hitting the thumbs up. Also, our main home is on Instagram. Seriously, just trust me, that's where the real magic happens. Follow us there at POPlitics.